The moon set slowly behind the jagged peaks of the Frostfangs, casting long fingers of silver across the old growth of the haunted forest. A thin crust of hoarfrost glazed every bare branch so that the trees themselves seemed fashioned from spun glass, fragile and ethereal and waiting for the gentlest tremor to shatter them. In their midst, Bran Stark sat unmoving upon a moss-slick root system as ancient as the gloom itself, eyes rolled white, sight cast far beyond the clearing's darkness. A low wind sighed through the needles overhead, but Bran did not feel the cold. He had slipped the prison of his flesh and now rode the river of time, and tonight that river rushed toward one vision alone. The tower always rose before him at the last, pale and solitary above the red sands of Dorne. Its weather-worn stones glowed saffron in the dying light, and at its pinnacle a torn Targaryen banner crackled in the desert wind like a wounded thing. He could taste chalk dust and blood and the copper heat of the sun on steel. He could hear distant screams of children and the clash of swords upon swords, each strike ringing like a funeral bell. He tried to look away, he always tried, but the vision mastered him as surely as chains. He saw Ser Arthur Dayne turn, dawnlight flashing upon the greatsword in his fist, saw young Eddard Stark rush to meet him over the dead, heard the rasp of their breath. Then the doorway loomed, black and gaping, and once again the cries of a woman in labor spilled down stone stairs sticky with blood. Bran climbed the steps unseen. The chamber smelled of crushed flowers and fever. Lyanna lay upon a featherbed soaked scarlet, her once glorious hair plastered to clammy cheeks. She gripped the bundle at her breast as if any separating force might tear her in two. Ned knelt beside her, gauntlet forgotten, tears streaking the ash upon his face. "Promise me," she whispered, and Bran mouthed the words with her, though no sound issued from his throat. The babe squirmed, coughing out a single, furious wail. Small hands clutched blindly for warmth, and Bran's heart stuttered when those fists unfurled. Stark black at the center, framed by paler flesh, like the opening petals of a blue winter rose. Aegon Targaryen, the vision named him, secret son of fire and ice, born beneath a bleached tower of grief. The knowledge seared Bran's mind anew each time, though he had worn the memory raw with repetition. He had witnessed other truths, battlefields long vanished, kings crowned and beheaded, dragons wheeling over smoking cities. But this revelation beat at his ribs like some monstrous heart demanding to be heard. And tonight, without warning or preamble, the flood of time yanked him violently forward. He soared past the tower, past Lyanna's rattled plea, plunged through decades. Cold air whipped his incorporeal face. Night bled into day, into night again, each cycle folding over the next until time itself became a howl. Then, abruptly, the storm broke. Bran found himself staring down at a great stone rampart thrown up against the sky, castle black, perched upon the wall's frozen spine. Torches guttered in battered sconces, sentries hunched in furs as black as ravens' wings. And there, on the courtyard's packed snow, stood Jon Snow, sword in hand, sweat steaming from his brow. Jon practiced alone, carving phantom foes with every savage arc of Longclaw. Each impact sent shivering ripples along the Valyrian steel until the wolf's head pommel seemed to snarl in living fury. His breaths were ragged, though whether from exertion or from the unrest coiling within him, Bran could not tell. Watching his brother, his cousin, Bran sensed the same heaviness that had crushed Jon since his resurrection at Melisandre's behest, a weight cold as the ice within the wall itself. Yet beneath that weight there flickered a brighter ember, a thing Bran recognized now as destiny. A gust decreased the torchlight, and Bran rode the flame's wavering glow down into the hollow of Jon's chest, into the chambers of his heart. There Bran placed the truth, away from scrolls and maesters, away even from whispered vows. He simply gave the secret to Jon in the timeless space of a heartbeat. Faces flashed in quicksilver sequence. Lyanna's blood-slick fingers, Rhaegar's haunted amethyst eyes, the ruby-studded breastplate that shattered upon Robert's hammer, the green reeds and mirrored pools of the Isle of Faces, half-remembered, the wall's grim, silent beauty. Then Bran was falling again, snowflakes turning to burning embers all around, and he gasped awake on the forest floor, his own breath frost-white against the gloom. Mira Reed knelt beside him, cheeks raw with windburn. "You were gone a long while," she said, voice low. She pressed a wineskin to his lips, but Bran waved it aside. "I have to reach Jon," he managed. Speech felt clumsy after the endless choir of the weirwood net. "Now, before Ravenska's dawn. He'll need more than my sight. He'll need proof." Mira glanced over her shoulder at the rotted black doorway of the weirwood cave. The three-eyed crow warned that some truths can break the world. Bran's spine ached from more than cold. The world is breaking already. Ramsay Bolton sharpens knives in Winterfell. The dead march beyond the wall. Jon must know who he is, or everything shatters. "But how?" Mira asked. "We can't send ravens. Crowfoot Umber holds last hearth, and Small Jon betrayed Robb. The Bolton sees every bird not nailed to its coat. Even if a bird reached the wall, how would Jon believe?" Bran closed his eyes. The scar of Hodder's dying roar still echoed in his mind, but deeper than grief lay newfound certainty. "I'll fly to him myself," he whispered, "on wings of storm." Snow smothered the night when the raven came to Castle Black, black feathers shimmering with hoarfrost. Its eyes were white, not milk-white with age but luminous, as if lit from within by cold flame. The bird did not land upon the rookery's ledge but alighted instead upon the piled stones of the Lord Commander's ruined chambers, raided and abandoned since the mutiny. Jon stood within, thawing his mail over a brazier, and stared at the raven as though it were some omen only half understood. The creature cocked its head. "Ice?" It croaked, voice deeper than the average corvid's. Then it ruffled its wings in agitation and added, "Fire!" The word seemed wrong in the raven's beak, grown heavy, tragic. Jon whispered a curse after the thing fluttered to the floor. There it hopped thrice, each bound tracing the points of a triangle whose center remained empty stone. The pattern chilled Jon more than the wind. Thurah's claimed birds could be message-bearers of the Red God, Melisandre said behind him, the ruby at her throat pulsing. Jon had not heard her enter, but this is older magic. Something sharpens the winds tonight. Jon knelt. "Are you a messenger?" he asked the raven. The bird blinked. Words spilled from its beak. Not the harsh syllables of bird speech, but full Westerosi, low and halting. "Promise me, Ned." It croaked, though the name came out like two blades grinding. Jon drew back so fast he toppled to one knee. A blood taste blossomed behind his teeth. "That phrase," he told Melisandre, throat tight. "My father's sister." He said she died whispering it. The raven beat its wings once and spoke again, but now Bran's voice carried through it, brittle but unbreakable. "Brother, listen. Your blood is dragon's blood. Your mother was Lyanna Stark. Your father was Rhaegar Targaryen." Silence pressed upon the chamber like ice across a lakebed. Beyond the broken window, torches guttered on the ice ramparts. Jon's breath left him in a hiss. "Who are you?" he asked, though part of him knew. "Bran," answered the voice. "I see you, Jon. I've seen you all your life." Jon remembered Bran in Winterfell's Godswood, small and fierce, wanting always to climb higher than he ought. He remembered their final embrace before the boy followed the old road north with Hodder. But Bran had been lost to storms and snows and rumors of mutiny. Until now, magic, Davos Seaworth would mutter hours later, is a ladder men climb unaware of the fall. Yet Jon in that frozen moment felt the rungs beneath his boots lock solid, as if the ladder itself demanded his ascent. "Prove it," Jon whispered, though the proof already throbbed in his veins like wildfire seeking air. The raven tilted its head. Bran's next words rattled the rafters. "The day you took your oath, Ghost refused the wall's shadow and howled until dawn. When Robb found your direwolf, its eyes were shut and its coat still slick with birth. You placed it upon your cloak before you dared touch it. Do you remember the color of that cloak, Jon?" Jon swallowed. Black, but still stark gray beneath the wool. His knees buckled a second time. Ghost loomed ghost-silent in the doorway now, fur prickling. The direwolf approached, sniffed the raven once, and lay down at Jon's feet, crimson eyes fixed on the bird as if enthralled. Melisandre stepped forward, ruby blazing. "Blood of the dragon," she intoned, voice quaking with reverence. "Azor Ahai reborn." "Enough," Jon barked. "Titles won't win the north." But the title burned just the same, each syllable licking like flame at the ice of his doubt. He heard Ned Stark's quiet late-night stories, telling of honor above all. He heard Lord Commander Mormont naming him his son in everything but blood. And now here was the true blood, stranger than any sword swing. The raven's white eyes dimmed. Bran's voice weakened. "You must ride south to Winterfell soon, but not as a snow. Rouse the north with the truth or Ramsay will feast on our kin. I can show you more. I can show them all. Will you trust me, Jon?" Jon closed his hand around the wolf-head pommel. "You're my brother," he said. "I trusted you long before the world learned to crawl." The bird's head dipped. Then Bran's consciousness fled its vessel, and the raven shook itself, cawed like any other of its kind, and took to the sky through the ruined window, vanishing into night. Jon stood unmoving until the brazier's coals faded. Melisandre lingered, lips parted in silent calculation. When at last she turned, she found Jon packing his saddlebags. "The Lord in you has been awakening since you opened your eyes upon the table," she said. "I'm no lord," Jon replied, voice flat enough to cut iron. "Not anymore. If that raven spoke true, I'm a king by birth and a bastard by choice. The Red God forges rulers from ruin. And ruin's exactly what we'll have if we march half-armed against the Boltons." He cinched the strap. "Wake Tormund Giant's Bane. Tell Davos to gather parchment, quills, anything with wax enough for seals. We ride at first light for Bear Island. The little Mormont girl may not bend her knee to bastards. Perhaps she'll bend it to dragons." Melisandre's smile was thin as the edge of a knife. "The night is dark and full of terrors. Yet if you are fire reborn, those terrors will burn beneath your feet." Jon paused. "Or they burn me from within." When Jon emerged into Castle Black's courtyard, dawn bled gray across the wall. He found Sansa near the battlements, cloak whipped horizontal by the wind. She glanced back at him as he approached, and for a heartbeat Jon thought she saw the shift within him, the torchlight of revelation flickering in his eyes. Sansa's every gesture since their reunion had been weighed between dread and desperate hope. Now suspicion crept into her voice. "Why do you pace before sunrise?" she asked. "To keep from freezing," he answered, and realized for once he spoke the truth in half measures. It was not the cold he feared, but the fire newly lit inside his soul. Sansa studied him. "Tormund sent word you mean to ride south at week's end. I thought we waited on the Hornwood's answer." "The North's lords answer only to names that stir old blood," Jon said. His words left shallow vapor trails in the morning chill. "Starks, Manderleys, Umbers of old. Or maybe names older still." Sansa's brow furrowed. "Jon, is something wrong?" "Everything. Nothing." Jon raked a hand through wind-tangled hair. "When father told stories," he said, "did he ever speak of Rhaegar Targaryen?" "Only in whispers," Sansa replied. "A crown prince who stole Lyanna and started a war. Mother used to curse his name." "So did I," Jon admitted. "But what if the truth is different?" Sansa wrapped her cloak tighter. "Different how?" Jon struggled for language. "What if stealing her wasn't stealing at all? What if they loved?" "That can't be. Men fight for love every day." Jon swallowed. "Father once said love is the death of duty, but maybe love is duty's cradle instead. If Rhaegar loved Lyanna, then Robert's rebellion murdered that love. And if Lyanna bore his child..." He stopped himself. Sansa's gaze sharpened like frost on glass. The silence between them lengthened until the entire wall seemed to sigh. "What child?" she asked. Jon looked beyond her to the horizon, where thin dawn brushed the sky with violet bruises. "One still living," he said quietly. "One grown." Sansa's lips parted. Understanding dawned, then recoiled. Yet no revulsion followed, only dawning calculation. as if she saw the pieces of a shattered game swarming into new alignment. "You mean to tell the lords," she said, almost a whisper. "I mean to tell the world," Jon replied. "Word travels in the north at the pace of crows and rumor, but the truth Bran Stark loosed that night rode swifter than any bird." Jon's letters, sealed with a wolf and dragon sigil Davos hurriedly carved from beechwood, spread first to the island fortress of Bear Island, then across the salt marshes to Oldcastle, over the King's Road to the green valleys of the Manderleys, and up the White Knife to the Pineham. Sailors shouted the tidings across docks. Minstrels wove new verses before the old were yet cold. In hearth glow of remote crofts, shepherds whispered byreside that Lyanna Stark's line breathed still and wore a sword of Valyrian make. But every rumor bore thorns. Some howled that Jon Snow was a kinslayer, claiming place over Robb's rightful vengeance. Others hissed that Targaryen madness bred in his blood like wildfire beneath the city of the mind. Yet still the word spread, because the North, for all its suspicion, remembered the crackle of dragonfire in old songs, and remembered too that snowbound fields yield nothing to a flayed man's banner. At Winterfell, Ramsay Bolton laughed when he heard the first murmur. "A dragon prince marching under a wolfskin," he mocked, slashing open a prisoner's belly to illustrate his amusement. "Let him come. I'll make him howl like any other dog." Yet in private he brooded. A name alone would not fell Bolton's spears, but names built camps larger than swords, and Ramsay felt for the first time a chill deeper than the Dreadfort's dungeons. In the Eyrie, Lord Protector Peter Baelish stroked the petulant chin of sweet Robin Robert Arryn and pondered angles sharper than mooncliffs. The Vale's knights, so long removed, scented glory in riding to a prince's banner. Littlefinger wondered how best to twist that hunger to his own ends. And in White Harbor, Lord Wyman Manderley raised a brimming cup of arbor gold. "The North remembers," he boomed across the feasting hall, "and the dragon remembers the North." His laugh was a roar that shook rafters dusted with age-old salt. Jon himself rode at first with only Tormund, Davos, Melisandre, and Ghost, alongside Sansa, who refused to be left behind. But at every village crossroads, another rider fell in beside them. A weather-beaten master-at-arms who once drilled men at Deepwood Motte. A smith from the Bar Rowlands who forged blades by starlight after Ramsay's dogs devoured his sons. A pair of spearwives who named no father but vengeance. Lyanna Mormont came with 23 men, yet carried herself as though she commanded legions. Jon's retinue grew from handful to host, torches stretching into the night like a ribbon of burning hope. Still, he felt each mile wearing thinner around his heart. Every time someone addressed him, "Your Grace," he flinched. Every time a boy pressed 2 fingers to his brow in a pledge of fealty, Jon recalled the cold table of Castle Black, the knife in his back and the hand, that hand, closing his eyes only for them to open again. King of night and death both, he thought. No wonder the gods themselves doubled me. Bran's ravens met them thrice along the road, eyes shining with unnatural light. Each time Bran delivered counsel. He spoke of weather patterns shifting, the snows that might drown Bolton outriders. He warned of a fastness near Shivering Forest where ruddy Huthfire lured travelers into gnawed bear traps. The party avoided it. And once he came with a single name spoken like thunder in the marrow. Rickon. Bran's news confirmed the youngest Stark lived, caged within Winterfell's walls. Jon's blood turned iron. A dragon does not abandon its clutch. The march quickened. At campfires, Melisandre murmured prayers to a fire that spoke back only in crackles. Davos grumbled of too few men and no siege towers. Tormund told bawdy tales until even Sansa betrayed a smile. Yet night by night the ghosts of past choices gathered round Jon. Ygritte's flaming hair, Maester Aemon's cataract-clouded eyes, the old bear's severed hand pinning him with silent expectation. Their company was terrible and wonderful all at once, for they whispered, "You were always both wolf and dragon. You were born to walk the line between realms." When they reached the lonely hill where Stannis Baratheon had once made camp, Jon halted. Dawn smeared rose-gold silhouettes of distant Winterfell across the sky, its squat towers, its broken battlements mended crudely under Bolton banners. For a heartbeat, he tasted wood smoke and winter roses upon the air. He dismounted and knelt, pressing a palm to the frost-slick ground. Under the thin crust, earth beat like a second heart. Winterfell's, Bran would later tell him, the very soul of the north pulsing through its weirwoods. Jon felt it throb up his arm and into the hollow between lungs. There, in that resonance, fire met ice and raised no steam, only strength. Behind him, ranks formed. Knights of the Vale with eagle crests bright in the newborn sun. Spearwives with hair tied back by strips of flayed Bolton skin. Mormont warriors dour and unshakable. And there, astride a shaggy Garren with ruddy curls half hidden by helm, Brienne of Tarth rode out from Sansa's side to kneel before Jon. "I served your cousin Renly until a shadow took him," she said. "Now I would serve House Stark and House Targaryen if it wears a wolf's face." Jon nodded. Words failed him. Instead he sheathed Longclaw, lifted the sword high, and drove it into the hilltop's frozen crust, blade first. The steel sang. Ravens erupted from the trees below, swirling black against the dawn. The banner Davos unfurled beside the blade bore a dire wolf rampant wrapped in dragon wings of crimson. A hush fell upon the host. In that hush, Jon found he could breathe again. "Dragons breathe fire," he called, voice carrying on the clear morning air. "But winter made me. I am ice and flame together. I am Jon of House Targaryen, first of my name, and I swear upon my mother's memory I will free Winterfell or die on its stones." He let the words hang, heavy as snowpack. Then he added, softer, "For Lyanna,
For Ned,
for Rickon, for every skin bled beneath a flayed man's smile." Sansa rode forward, her red hair bright as a nova in the sun. She raised her voice, iron-edged with stark resilience. "The North remembers," she cried, and tens of thousands echoed her roar that shook the frost from the branches. Jon drew Longclaw free. Frost melted along the Valyrian ripples, steam rising like dragon breath. He spurred his horse downhill toward the encampment that would soon become the battlefield. Behind him, the host advanced, banners snapping like sails catching a wind no mortal hand had summoned. Night settled one last time before the fateful dawn. In the quiet before battle, Bran came again, not by raven, but in dream. Jon found himself standing beneath Winterfell's heart tree. Crimson leaves drifted down like slow-falling blood. Bran sat across from him on the same twisted root where their father once cleaned his blade after hours of practice. He looked older than Jon remembered, pale hair shaggy, eyes milky as though the visions lived inside them permanently now. "You're here," Jon said. "Only in the space between beats," Bran replied. "Tomorrow will decide what kind of ruler you must become." Jon stared at the weirwood's face. Beneath its red-sapped tears, the carved mouth smiled faintly. "Am I their king, Bran? Or am I just a ghost haunting two families?" "Perhaps you are both," Bran said. "Ghosts can guard as well as haunt, and kings are born from echoes of dead songs as often as from crowns." He gestured to the tree. "Do you hear them?" Jon closed his eyes. A soft susurrus rumbled in the branches, as though every leaf murmured a different name. He heard Lyanna's laughter, heard Rickon's boyish yell, heard Hodder's single, noble word, and underlying all of it, a slow, thunderous beat, like a single vast heart still fighting beneath stone and snow. "Winterfell," Jon whispered. "The North," Bran corrected gently. "It chose you long ago." Jon opened his eyes. "Will that be enough?" Bran's smile was a flicker. "Enough for a beginning." He laid a hand on Jon's sleeve. "When dawn comes, remember, a dragon's greatest wrath is born of love, not hate. Fight for the living. Fight for the pack." Jon nodded. "And you?" "I'll be everywhere trees listen," Bran said. "Watching, weaving." He glanced upward, eyes catching starlight. "The others march. Night will follow this battle quickly. You must be ready." Jon's grip tightened on Longclaw's hilt. "I will." Snow ticked across Bran's shoulders, yet none settled. He seemed already half wind, half whisper. "Then wake," he said. "Dawn is licking the horizon." Jon turned and opened his eyes to the hard canvas roof of his command tent. Ghosts stood guard outside. Steel rang faintly through the darkness as distant sentries changed post. Jon rose, slung on his cloak, and stepped into the chill. Beyond the camp, the banners of House Stark Targaryen rippled under torchlight, cloth edges burning gold. Somewhere in the pre-dawn hush, a lone horn cried, long and low. Answering horns responded along the ridgeline. Horses stamped the earth. Men tightened straps. Women fit arrows to quivers like mothers laying children to sleep. Jon tightened the dragon wolf cloak across his shoulders. The ice in his veins hummed. The fire sent up sparks beneath that ice. Somewhere within, they met and spun and forged something stronger than either alone. He mounted his horse, nodded to Davos, to Tormund, to Sansa's quiet courage upon her hilltop vantage, and rode forward to the space fate had cleared for him. As the first edge of sun cracked pale gold above Winterfell's walls, Jon thought he felt the ground shudder. No mere tremor of hooves or siege engines, but the deep, ancient pulse Bran had named. Winterfell's heart, the North's song, and over that beat, Jon laid the final measure. The surety that ice and fire, meeting in flesh, could birth more than ruin. They could birth dawn. He raised Longclaw. The steel caught morning and flung it wide. Bolton horns brayed defiance. The battle of the bastards, men would later call it. But in that charged breath before charge, Jon understood it was no longer a war of bastards. It was a war of legacies, Stark, Targaryen, and all the living bound between. And as horse and rider plunged toward destiny, Bran's final words echoed like wind through weirwood leaves. Fight for the pack. Jon did, and the dawn blazed hotter for it. A hush lay across the bowl-shaped field north of Winterfell. A hush so taut it seemed every breath drawn by man or horse might snap the dawn itself. Frost rimed the grass in needle-fine crystals, each blade a sliver of glass waiting to shatter beneath hoof or boot. Jon rode the line in silence, black cloak lined with silver wolf fur billowing behind him, the dragon wolf standard fluttering at his back. He trained his gaze on the distant southern ridge where Bolton spears glimmered dully, ranked 6 men deep in orderly brutality. Above that serried forest of ash wood and steel, the flayed man banner drooped listless, painted skin pale against crimson field, as if the very cloth had tired of its own cruelty. Ramsay Bolton himself lounged upon a blood-bay destrier in front of his center, helm under one arm, smiling that small, satisfied smile of boys who never learned another face. Jon's heart measured the distance. 600 paces of brittle turf, a low rise midway, 2 shallow drainage ditches cut by ancient cattle paths now filled with icy sludge. Ghost padded beside his roan, shoulder brushing stirrup leather, white fur stark against trampled brown weeds. Along Jon's flanks stretched a host stitched together by desperation and legend. Mormont shield maidens gripping worn oaken shields, wildlings with antler helms and spiked cudgels, lanky Karstark cavalry who had slipped away from their uncle's camp beneath moonlight to pledge themselves anew, and behind them the gleaming knights of the Vale, lances upright like quills in a giant hedgehog. Somewhere amid that glitter rode Sansa, cloaked in snowfox fur, her eyes fixed on Winterfell's walls visible miles south, the crumbling stones reborn to stark silhouette as the sun climbed. Jon paced past the first Vale wedge. Plate armor winked rose gold where dawn struck polished curve. Ser Brynden Tully, rescued from Riverrun by stealth and favored luck, inclined his head. His trout sigil had been joined with a dire wolf stitched in silver thread, a quiet promise of allegiance. Lyanna Mormont, tiny atop a shaggy Garren, raised her chin at Jon, unflinching as any ancient queen. He saw Davos massing footmen at the rear flank, passing whispered orders, heard Melisandre behind the baggage line, praying softly in guttural Valyrian, caught glimpse of Tormund hefting an enormous iron-banded shield he had pried from a dead then. Each sight anchored him. He turned his mount finally and trotted to the fore, stopping on a slight hummock of frozen earth facing the Bolton line. Ramsay's formation rippled as men adjusted grip on spears' hafts. A drum sounded there, low and methodical boom, boom, mimicking the pulse that thrummed beneath Jon's ribs. He reined in, drew Longclaw and let the sun glance along its cruel ripples. No cheering issued from his ranks. The hush remained, an intake of breath not yet released. Jon lifted the sword high and spoke, voice traveling farther in that still air than any clarion. "You have known winter all your lives," he said, words even unhurried. "But winter is only a curtain for the play to come. Behind it waits a night no sun will pierce unless we break the men who weakened our walls and darkened our hearths. House Bolton rules by flaying skin. We rule by keeping heart. Hold your heart now, and you will fear nothing, not spear, not blade, not dying breath. We march as pack." He pointed Longclaw at the red banner across the field. "Let the flayed man feel the bite of living men who will not kneel." A murmur, low but fierce, welled through the ranks. No roar, but a sentient growl. Jon wheeled his horse, signaled. The warhorn Davos held to his lips spat twin notes, mournful and resolute. From the far left, Vale knights spurred forward at gentle trot, lowering lances. Behind them wildling archers jogged, stringing short recurves. Jon returned to center, raised his fist. Footmen advanced by 2 paces. He felt the crust of frost crumble under his horse's hooves. He waited. Across the bowl, Ramsay lifted a hand languidly. An officer thrust a spearcloth to beckon. From behind the Bolton main line rode a double column of horse. Tall, rangy maras ridden by men in dirty mail, their faces painted in black tar stripes. Umbers, the small Jon, false son of a fallen house, carried a 2-bladed axe wider than Jon's torso. He brandished it overhead and bellowed, "Snow!" His voice echoed off the rise and rolled back like thunder from a distant storm. Then he stood in his stirrups and spat onto the field, droplets sparkling crimson. Blood already in his mouth. Jon's lips tightened. The Vale-heavy riders to his right shuffled. Their commander eyed him, waiting permission to charge. Not yet. Jon felt a slow fire in his blood, the memory of Bran's dream state counsel. Do not break the shield wall until terror breaks their will. He slid Longclaw back into its sheath, startling the few near enough to see. Hands empty, he kicked his roan into motion, riding alone halfway toward the midpoint rise. Murmurs chased him. What is he doing? Has he gone mad? Ramsay's head tilted, bemused. Jon halted just inside bow range. The hush shifted. He felt it like a living beast circling. He reached to the clasp of his cloak, unhooked it, and let the dragon wolf banner fall behind him onto the frost. Then he unslung the rolled raven-black cloak beneath, and unfurled not black at all, but a strip of pale ash-gray silk embroidered with 7 red outlined stars surrounding a rearing 3-headed dragon coiled about a dire wolf rampant. Old Targaryen iconography fused to Stark lineage, the cloth too fine for northern garb, gleaming faint as mother of pearl. Jon raised it high for all to see. Gasps scud like forest wind through both armies. Bolton ranks shifted uneasily. Even the disciplined Umber front pulled reins. Jon's voice carried, strong and stripped of all adornment. Jon Targaryen, I name myself of the blood of the dragon and the winter wolf. House Bolton murdered my brother, ransomed my youngest kin, and wears my home like a stolen skin. Who stands with the rightful blood of Winterfell, step forward. Who stands with torturers, steel yourselves now for judgment. A pause. Silence. A raven croaked somewhere overhead. Then, startlingly, movement. One rider in Bolton ranks, a youth with no crest, helm underarm, edged his horse forward 3 steps before halting, trembling. An officer backhanded him across the mail gorget, snarling. The youth's helm tumbled and rolled along the frost. He stared at it, lip bleeding, then rode forward again, jaw set. He wheeled toward Jon's line at a canter, spear lowered but not couched, as though measuring his fate. Before any arrow loosed, Jon signaled stay. The rider stopped 20 paces away and shouted, "For Robb Stark, who gave me my first sword," then spurred past Jon, racing for the Vale wedge. Archers restrained fire. A wildling woman cheered. Ramsay's calm cracked. He gave a quick slice of hand across his throat. War drums thundered into sudden life. Crossbowmen shuffled to the fore. The umber horses lurched, axes brandished. Jon whirled and galloped back toward his front. As he rode, he saw it. The hush converting at last to momentum, a collective exhale. He reached the rise before the center, wheeled, raised Longclaw, and dropped his arm. Horns sounded, 3 blasts for advance. Infantry surged, shields up, spears bristling. The Vale Knights on the right thundered into full charge. Hooves hammered the ground, raising plumes of glittering frost like powdered crystal. Left flank wildlings sprinted, arrows knocked, war cries ragged and ecstatic. Jon stayed central, refusing release until the lines ahead coalesced. Bolton arrows blackened the sky, hissed down into charging ranks, wood clattered on shields, tore screams from luckless throats. Jon felt one shaft glance off his pauldron, spinning away. Then the first ranks collided with a percussive crash that stole breath even 100 yards back. Vale lances split shields and breastbones. The momentum snapped shafts, toppled riders, horses screamed. Wildling darts flecked the sky. Bolton crossbowmen loosed retaliatory storms. Shafts corkscrewed into wildlings and Karstarks alike. Jon spurred forward with his guard. Tormund beside him bellowing, Davos grimly silent, Brienne a blue steel tower. They crested the midpoint rise. Below, melee seethed. Figures locked, parted, blood splashing onto frozen ruts. Jon saw the small Jon hacking at a Vale squire who raised a shield too slowly. The axe split helm and skull, the squire folded like punched parchment. Jon angled toward him. The Umber Lord turned in time, laid his destrier into a lunge. The axe arched overhead. Jon deflected the blow with Longclaw, sparks spitting, felt numb shock run his arm. He leaned from the saddle, slashed for the man's thigh. The Valyrian edge bit through mail, met bone, skidded free. Small Jon howled, swung again. Jon ducked low, blade slicing the tendons behind the man's knee. The Umber toppled sideways, half dismounted, axe lost. Jon reined in, wheeled. His roan reared, hoofs flashing. One struck the Smaljun's helm, denting it with temple-shattering force. The Umber sank, stunned. Jon's sword descended, clean through gorget and spine. Blood jetted in an arc onto snow. A roar rose from nearby Bolton foot soldiers, some battle cry of loyalty or fear, yet many faltered, seeing the Umber fall so swiftly. A crack tore the air, the Bolton line buckling at the center where Mormont warriors pressed with tower shields. Jon pressed advantage, calling riders forward. Ghost streaked through gaps, tearing at hamstrings. But Ramsay had prepared depth. Behind the faltered spearmen waited pikemen forming hedgehog. Behind them a lurk of archers loosed with lethal calm. Vale horses reared against pikes. Riders fell, screams cut short by narrow heads of iron. The charge stalled. The mass of infantry collided with their own dead, momentum bleeding. Jon sought vantage. The ditch to his left now churned to dark mud glazing with red. Bodies clogged it. If the center collapsed, flanks would fold. He raised his sword for rally, then sudden concussion erupted behind him. Something streaked overhead, trailing smoke. An incendiary pitchpot fired by Bolton catapult nested near the castle ruin. It burst midair. Flaming oil cascaded across the north side of the field where wildling archers massed. Lines wavered as fire licked cloaks and dried grass. Screams cut the dawn. Jon's horse shied. He steadied it, scanning. Brienne shoved past, shield raised, directing footmen to flank left around the firebreak. Davos, far rear, sounded retreat horns to reform lines, but the wind snatched the notes. Then, from behind Jon's line, another sound. A thick, reverberant horn unlike any northern call. He turned. Along the tree line to the west, banners rose, white elk rampant on green, and beyond them hissing weirwood leaves parted like stage curtains. Out rode Lord Meege Mormont's cousin with 200 spear-bearers who had marched overnight from Stony Shore, guided by Bran's dream ravens. Behind them labored low carts draped in burlap. As the columns halted, the burlap sheets fell away to reveal crude scorpion engines cobbled from driftwood and shipwreck iron. For men cranked each, bolts as long as pikes sat ready. Jon felt a grin split his lips. He spurred to meet them, bellowing orders. Target the pikes. Rake their rear. The scorpions clacked, arms releasing. Massive bolts whistled end over end, smashing into the densely packed Bolton pike hedge, impaling 2, sometimes 3 men. Chaos rippled backward. Vale cavalry seized the moment. They regrouped and charged anew at breakneck. Pikes faltered. Gaps opened. Horse and steel flooded through. Amid the surge, Jon saw Ramsay at center rear, face tightened now, a single line between brows. The boy lord yanked his reins, commanding his red cloak guard forward to stem flow. Jon forged ahead, cutting through swirling melee, Vale riders orbiting him like iron filings aligning to a magnet. He cut down a pikeman, parried another, ducked a mace blow, skewered a crossbowman. Blood spattered his cheek, hot and metallic. Cold air bit the wet edges, and he felt alive in the way only near-death grants. Near the ditch bottleneck, he found Tormund locked with a monstrous Bolton sergeant wielding dual hand-axes. Chips flew from Tormund's shield. Jon cut across the sergeant's hamstring, and Tormund finished the job with a headbutt that cracked helm plates. They clasped bloodied forearms once and pressed on. The field became thunder of hooves and shrieks of dying steel. Yet in that hell Jon perceived pattern. Bolton ranks breaking not in panic but in controlled fallback toward a secondary line forming at the south slope. Ramsay raced among fleeing units, redirecting them to barricades built overnight of sharpened stakes pointing outward. If Jon's cavalry hit those stakes at full gallop, ruin would follow. He reared his horse, raised Longclaw overhead in a whirling signal. Vale horns bleated retreat. Knights peeled away, cloaks snapping. Behind them footmen disengaged, step by step, shielding against arrows. The order came just in time. Half a beat later, scorpions of Bolton design hidden near Winterfell discharged. Thick bolts shrieked through the space horses had vacated, punching into empty turf, missing the retreating line. Jon's host reformed atop the midpoint crest. Bodies lay between lines like strewn timber. Scarves of smoke drifted from charred tussocks. Red-black pools steamed. Jon drew shuddering breath, scanning. His force had bled, but Bolton's middle now lay in tatters. Archers fewer. Pike wall ruptured. Yet barricades menaced. Time favored whichever side first rallied. He turned as Sansa rode up with Ser Brynden and Lyanna Mormont, a cluster of Karstark men holding captured Bolton officers at spear point. Sansa's face was streaked with soot but eyes blazed azure as midday. "Ramsay still has Rickon," she said. "We cannot break him with spears alone. It must be terror." Jon wiped gore from Longclaw. "We terrorize a terrormonger," he answered, then paused, mind ticking. He looked to the burled scorpions at rear. "Unless we drag his hidey hole into daylight." Conversation halted as Bran's raven, snow clinging to tail feathers, swooped to Jon's pommel. White eyes fixed on Jon. Bran's voice came, brittle. "Crypt and trance eastern wall. Hidden postern. Guide guards away with false skirmish, send small force inside. Free Rickon, open gate." Jon inclined his head. The raven blinked, took flight. He turned to Brynden. "Ride with your quietest men to the east wall. Draw pursuit away, then double back. Brienne leads infiltration, Ghost with her." "Sansa, I'm going," she said before he could protest. He saw in her stance the same iron Ned carried. He nodded. "Tormund, you hold the center with Vale foot, but no full push until you see the east gate lift. Scorpions keep pressure. Archers bleed them if they sortie." He spoke louder now, commanders leaning close to catch every word. "We break Ramsay by freeing his prize." Lynna's small voice cut, fierce. "He would never yield. Make him dead." Jon almost laughed. Such ferocity in a child, but the wisdom rang. He clasped her shoulder. They broke. Brynden galloped off east with 40 riders. Brienne joined Davos to pick 20 men swift-footed. Sansa dismounted to change into Bolton Guard livery stripped from a prisoner. How easily she slid the skin of her tormentor over her own. Jon thought with both pride and dread. "Go." St pressed nose into Sansa's thigh. She stroked his head before slipping between lines. The pause lengthened. Snow began falling, fine crystalline dust, swirling across corpses. Ramsay watched from across the field, suspicion plain. He gestured. Shields raised, arrows knocked, but he did not advance. He waited to see what the Dragonwolf host would do. Jon used waiting as blade sharpening. He breathed slow, steady, counting heartbeats. He thought of Lyanna whispering, "Promise me." He thought of Rhaegar on the trident, rubies scattering into riverbed. He thought of Maester Aemon dying in a cabin at sea, lamenting the dreams of spring he would never see. All that grief, all that love, all that blood had pooled into the single morning of snow dust and butchered grass. An hour crawled by. Archers exchanged occasional flights. The air grew heavy with unshed storm. Then, from Winterfell's east wall, a horn blew, single note, high. Jon jerked upright. Over Bolton barricades, he glimpsed confusion. Guards rushing, some running toward the horn, others away, commanders shouting. A firework of sparks burst briefly above the rampart. Someone signaling. Tormund grinned wolfishly. "That's the gate. I smell fear." Jon pivoted scorpions. "Aim for barricade gap only when it opens." Crews nodded, cranks turning. He mounted. Infantry advance by shield wall, left and center. Knights be ready to sweep once hedge breaks. "We move on my banner." He hefted the Dragonwolf cloth again. Wind snapped it. They started at steady march. Snow thickened. Visibility shrank to mile, half mile. He saw the barricade line looming. Spikes tipped red. Men gathered behind. At 200 paces, Bolton war horns bellowed panic. The east gate of Winterfell yawned inward. Figures poured out. Not Bolton reinforcements but prisoners. Gray-cloaked shapes scattering into courtyard. Rickon's small form among them lifted by Brienne's giant arms onto a horse, Ghost bounding alongside. Wild cheers rose from northern ranks, carrying through snow. Ramsay reacted. He rode along his rear shouting, trying to rally, but his center sagged. Jon loosed the banner downward. Vale horns sounded full charge. Infantry dashed. Shields boomed against spike hedge. Scorpion bolts tore through scant cover. Barricades cracked under weight of men and mount and scything axes. Jon galloped behind the first rank, Longclaw catching diffused light. He met an officer, parried, cleaved helm, fought on. Sansa appeared amid swirl, pulling Rickon onto safer ground behind archers. Her eyes found Jon's, triumph, dread, relief blending into incandescent resolve. The battle dissolved into chaos. Flayed man's standards toppled. Men tore them down, raised direwolf dragon in their place. Bolton soldiers surrendered in clumps. Others fought to the last. Ramsay retreated toward a secondary horse ring, but a Vale arrow sliced through his mount's neck. The beast tumbled. Ramsay rolled free, rose with bow already drawn, firing at random. One shaft grazed Jon's vambrace, but before he could notch again, Tormund crashed into him, shield first, sending him sprawling. Ramsay scrambled to knees only to meet Ghost's snarling teeth inches from his face. The direwolf stood quivering, awaiting Jon's command. Jon dismounted slowly. Snowflakes melted on heated mail, hissed. He approached Ramsay, sword lowered. The bastard of Bolton tilted his head, grin broken by blood trickling from split lip. "Snow," he said, tone choked with a strange admiration. "You really are a son of bitches." Jon studied him. "No," he answered softly. "I'm the son of winter's rose and dragon's flame." Then he stepped back. Ghost launched. A single scream cut short, red fanned across snow. Silence swallowed the field. Somewhere a horn keened one final note and fell quiet. Snow continued its descent, softening edges of corpses and scattered weapons, blanketing din in hush once more. Jon stood unmoving over blood-damp ground until Tormund touched his shoulder. "It's done," the wildling murmured. Jon lifted eyes toward Winterfell. Smoke curled from within, but not black of pillage, rather gray of hearths rekindled, of kitchens stoked. Brienne waited at the gate, one hand on Rickon's shoulder. Sansa stepped beside them, slipping brother's cloak across Rickon's narrow frame. Jon walked the distance alone. The taste of battle lingered, metal, ash, fear. But beneath it grew another scent. Pine resin from courtyard fires, roasting chestnuts perhaps prepared by frightened cooks forced to feed their captors. Ordinary smells reclaiming a place of horror. He crossed the threshold. The great yard lay littered yet, but living Starks now trod its stones. He sheathed Longclaw. Bran's raven alighted on the broken rampart, white eyes fixed on Jon. Bran's voice came faint. The dead march still, but today the pack is whole. Jon reached to stroke Ghost's gourmatted ruff. The direwolf leaned into the touch, whining low, content. Rickon stepped forward timidly. Jon knelt, arms open. The boy paused, tears cutting clean lines through soot. Then he ran the final feat, burying face in Jon's armor. Jon held him, feeling the tremor of childish sobs, feeling his own breath shudder. He looked up at Sansa. Their eyes spoke, "We are home." Above them, the Heart Tower's broken bell tolled of its own accord. A single peal, low and resonant, as if the stones themselves recognized rightful blood returned. Wind whistled through arrow slits, carrying new snowflakes onto banner poles where the dragonwolf cloth now unfurled wide, bleeding red stars across white. Night would come soon, and with it the greater war Bran warned. But within these walls, for one measured heartbeat, dawn lingered. Fires crackled, voices rose in hesitant cheer, and the ghosts of Winterfell stilled their restless pacing. Jon raised his face to snow-choked sky and for first time felt sun's warmth through cloud as if it answered ancient promise. The North remembers, and the dragon remembers the North. He exhaled. "On this ground," he said under breath only Ghost heard, "ice and fire stand together." And in the hush that followed, the world, even if briefly, felt possible again. Wind knifed through the broken murder holes above Winterfell's outer gate, drawing low moans from the stone as though the castle itself were waking from a nightmare it could not yet name. The sun had crawled halfway toward the western horizon, its light thinning to watery gold that pooled in the courtyard's icy puddles. Fires burned in barrel braziers and in the great hearths of the hall, their smoke curling up into the evening sky where storm clouds marched out of the north like bruised sails. The first crows had already gathered on the roof of the great keep, black silhouettes against the paling blue, curious and hungry. Jon stood at the center of the yard beside the shattered iron ring where Ramsay's kennels had once howled. The blood on his hauberk had turned rust brown, the sweat beneath chilled stiff. Around him the ground crew heaved bodies into wagons, first Bolton dead, then their own, each shrouded in whatever tarp or cloak could be spared. The labor was silent save for the rumble of wheels and the grunt of straining men. There were too many faces they knew among the still forms to speak easily. Every now and then a woman keened, another voice would answer, then hush would fall again. Snowflakes drifted onto the blankets, melting slowly into pink stars. Rickon clung to Sansa's side, peering out at the grim work with wide gray eyes that seemed older than his years. He wore a tunic cut from Bran's outgrown leathers, the collar too large, sleeves rolled. Sansa kept one arm wrapped about his shoulders, the other hand resting a dirk across her hip. She had shed the Bolton livery and now bore a fresh cloak of direwolf gray-lined in white fox, sewn hurriedly from the winter stores. Her hair fell loose down her back except where a single braid wound around her crown like a throne's circlet, the red bright against the snow. Seeing her thus, Jon felt a tug of awe. Here stood Lady of Winterfell, though uncrowned, unkissed by Maester's seals. The castle seemed to lean toward her, stones recognizing a heartbeat not heard since Catelyn's rule. Ghost stalked near the wagons, hackles still raised despite the battle's end. No hand yet dared soothe the direwolf. The taste of Ramsay's throat lingered hot in memory. At times the beast tilted his head toward the godswood, ears flicking at sounds no human ear caught. Bran is there, Jon thought, though he doubted even ravens could fly through storm's end of snow now sweeping in. Tormund rumbled up beside Jon, wiping gore from his braid. Bolton's own kennel master swears there's stores of grain and salted pork left, he said. The red flay bastards didn't trust the larder keys to Sell's words. His grin showed missing tooth. We'll eat warm tonight. Jon nodded. Make sure the prisoners eat too. Cold bellies breed sharper knives. Tormund studied him. You talk like a king used to thrones he's never Saturday. His tone held admiration and a question both. I talk like a crow used to mutiny, Jon answered, mouth corking despite the weariness. If we forget hungers, they remember us. He clapped Tormund's shoulder. Find the maester they kept. We'll need herbs for the wounded before frostbite does worse than swords. Tormund ambled off, shouting for wildling women to help haul stretchers. Jon turned toward the hall. The great doors stood ajar, warmth spilling across the threshold in a wavering orange path. Beyond, in the echo of the vaulted ceiling, he heard clatter of platters, low rumble of many hushed conversations, the occasional ring of metal as cooks fought battered pots into service. The battered castle inhaled new life with each sound. Inside, the banners had already been switched. Stark direwolf of smoke gray on winter white hung from the rafters again, flanked by two smaller fields stitched earlier that day, each showing the three-headed dragon ringed by red seven-pointed stars. They looked almost tentative against the old stone, as though sniffing whether they belonged. Yet even Davos, seated near the hearth with steaming broth, had gazed upon them with something like hope. Men need symbols, the Onion Knight had muttered when Jon paused at his side. And hope eats its fill only when the pot's brimful. Jon strode to the dais and paused at its foot. There lay Longclaw across the high table. Steel cleaned, wolf's head pommel newly wrapped in linen to hide dents inflicted by crossbow bolts. Behind it stood vacant the tall chair once carved for Eddard Stark in better days. The cushion bore a fresh pelt of gray wolf fur. Above, the direwolf banner rippled gently in hall drafts. Jon's throat tightened. He thought of Ned's quiet eyes, the stern mercy in his voice when instructing his children. The man who passes the sentence should swing the sword. Jon had swung many blades. Today he'd passed judgment by letting Ghost close jaws. Would his father have approved? Perhaps. Perhaps not. The world had changed. Sansa guided Rickon to a bench near the dais. He slumped, exhaustion overtaking adrenaline. Sansa met Jon's gaze across the hall, a silent invitation. He mounted the steps, came to her side. She inclined her head subtly toward the chair. Someone must sit, she murmured, low as falling ash. The lords gather tonight. They'll want more than torches to follow. Jon swallowed. He glanced at Rickon, too young, trembling still, and at Sansa, strong but marked by horrors. He felt the hall's eyes, though many pretended not to watch. Spoons paused, mugs suspended. He placed one gloved hand on the chair's carved wolf head, then curled fingers away. Sit with me, he said. Together they lowered into the seat, side by side upon the broad cushion. Murmurs rippled. Surprise, approval, confusion. All blurred into one hush like waves on distant shore. Jon rested Longclaw across his knees. Sansa folded her hands atop its flat spine. The hall resumed its breathing. Later, when twilight painted the windows violet and torch smoke drifted like ribbons above the tables, Maester Medrick, wiry man of 60, eyes bloodshot from candlecraft, approached the dais with scrolls bound in blasted wax. Your Graces, he began, stumbling over the new plural. Letters arrived under truce flag from Deepwood, Barrowton, and Oldcastle. The Manderleys prepare barges of grain. Lady Barbary Dustin begs to treat for clemency, and Queen Cersei demands the North deliver you bound to King's Landing, that she may burn you in Baelor September as traitors and dragon spawn. He offered the sealed scrolls. Jon accepted, broke them open. The first lines blurred. The ink reeked of desperation, promises, threats. He passed Cersei's letter to Davos, who snorted and crumpled it into the hearth. Sansa read the others, mouth set. We answer no queen south of the neck, she declared to Maester Medrick. Tell Lady Dustin she may keep clemency if she delivers every northern hostage in her care back to us unharmed. If she disobeys, We will take Barrow Hall and hang her flayed man banners upside down. Medric inclined his head, relief softening disgusted shock. Jon watched Sansa, pride stirring. She had found steel. The maester then cleared throat. One more matter, ravens from the wall. Lord Commander Ed Tollett reports strange glows beyond the Frostfangs, as if wildfires traveling upon snow. Dead men sighted near Hardhome once more. He begs aid in men, food, and dragonglass. Jon's chest chilled deeper than Winterfell stones. He dismissed Medric and leaned toward Sansa. We have barely saved Winterfell, yet winter's true storm bears down. We need every lord swiftly. We need dragons, Sansa whispered. Jon thought of Daenerys across the narrow sea. Rumors a queen with 3 dragons sailed toward Westeros. Could their blood tie draw alliance? Or conflict? No raven could cross the narrow sea before the dead and their white fog reached Winterfell. A sudden flutter overhead drew all gazes. Bran's raven sailed through the high windows, perched upon a beam above the dais. His white eyes glimmered. Jon tensed. The voice that issued was thin as spider thread but firm. The wall cracks. Eastwatch will fail by moon's turning. We must go to Dragonstone before the ice tide. The stone remembers fire. Silence deepened. Some men crossed themselves. Others spat in superstitious dread. Jon lifted his voice. Bran, can you guide us to ships that survive the narrow sea this season? He asked the rafters. The raven tilted its head. The sea is teeth, but wings cross where keels drown. Seek the cliffs at White Harbor. There rests the last egg not hatched. Gasps rippled. Jon's brows knitted. Egg! The raven gave a final ruffle, then flew out, disappearing into purple sky. Whispered speculation erupted. Tormund stomped up the dais, planting fists on hips. Birds spoutin' riddles. I prefer spears. He eyed Jon. But if an egg means dragon, and dragon means fire for dead things, I'll swim the sea carrying the bloody thing in my beard if need be. Jon smiled grimly. Let's pray it doesn't come to that. He stood. Hear me. The hall quieted. He raised Longclaw so torchlight filled its ripples. We face a war greater than banners. Tonight we rest. Tomorrow we bury our dead, feed the living, and send ravens to every corner of the north. All men and women willing to hold a sword must march by month's end. The Night King rides on winds cold enough to crack stone. If we are divided, we fall. If we stand as Stark and Targaryen both, the north will not break. A thunder of cups on tables answered. Voices rose, a rough chant. The pack survives, echoed thrice. Jon lowered the sword. Sansa touched his arm, eyes shining. Snow buried most tracks by morning, but the air held an eerie hush, as if the land itself stretched taut listening for distant thunder. In the Godswood, the heart tree loomed scarlet against the white world, leaves chattering like teeth. Jon, cloaked in black wool and wolf fur, knelt beneath its face. Bran sat cross-legged on a root opposite, eyes rolled white within their sockets. The boy had arrived at first light, borne on a crude sledge pulled by Mira and accompanied by Hodder's ghostly absence. Jon spoke softly into the cold. You sent us after an egg. Bran's eyes fluttered normal, pupils expanding. A hussar of the first men hid it in the cairn beneath White Harbor's cliffs 1,000 years ago when dragons first fell from skies. He swore his line would guard it until ice came south again. The last of that line kneels in Lord Wyman's hall tonight. We must claim the egg before the Night King's storm buries the coast. Jon absorbed this. A single egg. Will it hatch? Only with heat far hotter than hearthfire, Bran said. Dragonstone's heart of flame beats still in its old volcano. There the dragon could be born. His voice drifted, as though carried backward along memory's wind. I have seen scales like molten bronze and wings shadowing the sea. Even one dragon may turn the tide, Jon said. Bran nodded but did not smile. I have also seen its rider fall from the sky, spear of ice through breastbone. Futures twist. Nothing is given. Jon brushed snow from his gloves. Then we roll the bones we have. Bran raised a hand. When you ride south, Bring me to the Isle of Faces. The weirwoods there remember the pact of men and children. I must wake those memories. Jon's breath fogged. The world may not allow such pilgrimage. The world must. Bran's eyes sleet into distance. If the green men sing again, the Night King's song may falter. Jon rose, snow creaking. He placed a hand on Bran's thin shoulder, feeling the cold skin beneath furs. Whatever road you need, I'll clear. They left the Godswood together, ghost-pacing sentinel. By the third day, Winterfell's yard billowed with arriving banners. Blue Bear of Mormont, Green Pine of Hornwood, Silver Moose of Stout, Emerald Flayed Man of Lady Dustin reversed to show its belly in shame, and even the flapping White Kraken of House Manderly despite its sea-bound distance. At dawn each new contingent lined before the Great Hall to pledge swords to King Jon Targaryen Stark, first of his name, Defender of the North. Jon's protests faltered after the fourth oath. Davos reminded him a crown meant little until worn, and the lords would not stomach uncertainty. So Jon accepted a simple circlet of dark steel hammered by Gendry Waters, who had arrived with Melisandre from the Brotherhood camp near the Trident, forging day and night in traveling smithy. The circlet bore no jewels, only a stylized direwolf biting its own tail, twin rubies for eyes, silent nod to Targaryen flame. The coronation took place at dusk beneath the Heart Tree, attended by gathered lords with cloaks drawn against the rising wind. Sansa placed the circlet on Jon's brow. Rickon laid a sprig of winter rose at his feet. Bran, eyes aglow, invoked old words of the first men. Jon spoke no vow of conquest, only of defense. To hold winter's gates, to shelter the weak, to burn the dead before they could rise again. His voice shook not with fear but with enormity of promise. When he finished, the assembled shouted, "Winter and fire!" An awkward chant but heartfelt. That night, Jon convened his war council in the solar overlooking the courtyard. Around the rough oak table crowded Tormund Giantsbane, Lady Lyanna Mormont perched on a carved stool, Davos leaning heavily on ale-stained map, Brienne of Tarth arms folded in silent vigilance, Lord Wyman Manderly striped in perspiration from his ride, and Bran half-propped in a wicker chair with Mira behind. Outside the window the wind howled like packs of restless wolves. Jon tapped the map. The Night King breached Hardhome's cliffs again. Eastwatch holds but sends ravens hourly. When the wall falls, where does he strike first? Last Hearth, Carhold, or straight south along the King's Road? Bran's voice soft. He hunts memories he could not kill before. A song of ice and fire that woke him in the first forging. You carry part of the tune. The dragons carry the other. He will come for you, Jon. And for Daenerys. Silence. Davos rubbed beard stubble. If that's so, and he means to march on Dragonstone, the south will face the horde before the north. Then we sail to meet Daenerys before he does, Jon said. He turned to Wyman. I need your fastest galley. We carry Bran, Mira, Davos, and a dozen good hands to fetch the egg. Then we sail for White Harbor, pick up supplies, and south to Dragonstone. Lyanna Mormont scowled. You leave the north leaderless with dead at the gate? Sansa holds Winterfell, Jon answered. Tormund commands the castle guard. Brienne trains every man, woman, and child who can hold a spear. He met her gaze. The wall's fall is certain. We need allies beyond it. Dragons, the Vale's full might. Maybe even the Iron Islands if Yara Greyjoy lives. Lady Lyanna kicked her heels against stool legs. If we die before your return, I'll haunt you. Jon allowed a smile. I'd expect nothing less. Davos sighed. Storms this season will chew ships to splinters. Wyman thumped belly. My new flagship, the Silver Seal, is stout as any ironborn longship and twice the sail. She'll carry you, though the seas toss. Bran's eyes unfocused. Winds will howl for 3 days, but there is a window at dawn on the 4th. Sail then, tide at ebb. The sea will flatten until dusk. No one questioned. They marked the departure at Bran's word. Plans cascaded. Tormund organized scouting parties beyond the shivering forest routes. Lyanna secured ravens to every holdfast that still possessed rookery. Brienne drafted training schedule. Davos compiled supply list. Sansa arrived mid-meeting to present ledgers of grain counts and wagon repairs, surprising even Davos with meticulous sums. When at last torches sputtered low, the council dispersed, leaving Jon staring at the map's colored pins. Sansa lingered. "You always wanted the wall," she said, voice quiet. "Now the wall wants you elsewhere." Jon straightened, aching back. "I want none of this. I want peace. But peace must be forged." She reached to adjust the circlet slipping down his brow. "Wear it straight," she murmured. "Ned used to tug Robb's collar when it bunched." Her fingers rested a moment longer, then fell. She studied him. "When you kneel to this dragon queen, if you kneel, remember the North's blood cost. Do not barter it away." He met her gaze. "If she will not join the fight, I will kneel to none. But if dragons burn whites to ash, we need them." Sansa nodded, though worry rippled like winter wheat across her features. She turned to go, then paused. "Jon." He waited. "Don't die on that sea. I can't govern ghosts forever." He almost laughed. "I'll try my best." Dawn of the fourth day rose pale as a sick child's cheek. Snow had abated to fine powder swirling in lazy eddies. The silver seal bobbed at White Harbor's frozen quay, her prow carved as leaping wolffish with ruby eyes set into oiled birch. Crew bustled under Captain Ralph Storm, a bald bear of a man whose beard showed frost even in midsummer, so tales said. Sails of heavy linen lay reefed, ready to unfurl at Bran's predicted lull. On the dock, Jon embraced Sansa, careful of her new maester-mended leather breastplate. Rickon perched on a bollard, waving wooden sword. Ghost sat beside him, protective. Tormund clasped Jon's hand in bone-crushing grip. "Return with a dragon or don't return," he growled. Jon grinned. "If I return on dragon, try not to shoot it."
"No promises."
Brienne bowed, face solemn. "I will guard them with my life." "I know." Jon turned to Beric Dondarrion, who had arrived at dawn with Thuras and a half-score of Brotherhood archers. "Keep watch along the King's Road. Light any tree that sees dead men." Beric's flaming sword hissed briefly in sea spray. "The Lord of Light still has work for me. I'll send sparks." Jon hefted his pack, crossed the gangplank, and felt the deck's rolling welcome beneath boots. Davos followed, muttering about old bones and foolish seas. Bran was already lashed into a wicker seat near the quarterdeck, fur hood framing his pale face. Mira tied his blankets, each knot precise. Lord Wyman shouted final orders and waddled ashore, handing a parchment of trade codes for safe mooring at Gulltown should storms blow them east. Lines cast off, oars dipped, creaked. The silver seal slid into the frigid mouth of the white knife. Sailors hauled rope, and the heavy mainsail unfurled like a gray wing. Wind caught, bellied the canvas. The ship heeled, groaned, then straightened, riding the outgoing tide. White Harbor's towers dwindled behind frost fog, candles blinking farewell. Jon stood aft with Davos at his side. Salt cold bit cheeks, but the sea smelled of promise beyond nightmare's edge. He watched the pale sky lighten, trailing faint ribbons of rose where sun might break later. Bran's wind prophecy held, the water smoothed, waves lapping gentle. Seals barked on distant ice floes, gulls circled, crying. "On a day like this," Davos said, "I'd swear the sea loves us still." He rubbed missing finger stubs. "Then the sea shows teeth." He looked to Jon. "Are you ready for teeth, your grace?" Jon considered. "My life began in lies, rose on ice, burned on fire, and returned under a god I barely believe. Teeth I can manage." Davos chuckled. "That's the spirit." His gaze turned south, toward invisible Dragonstone. "Let's hope the Dragon Queen believes too." Far forward, Captain Storm shouted for bow watch. Between gray swells something bobbed. Corpse of a whale split by kraken or ice, its pale underbelly huge as Winterfell's keep. Carrion birds dotted it. Among them, white shapes perched, too tall for gulls, too still. As the seal drew nearer, Jon's breath hitched. The shapes were men clad in frost-rimmed leather, eyes blue as glacial depths, crouched silent on whale carcass, watching the living ship pass. Crew gasped. Archers reached for bows. Jon stayed them with raised hand. The dead things did not move, did not leap. One slowly lifted a finger, pointing south. Then another echoed. 7 whites, arms extended southward like signposts. Davos cursed softly. They mock us. Jon's jaw clenched. They guide us, telling us they follow. The dead did not attack. They simply watched as the silver seal sailed away until fog swallowed them. The omen lay heavy upon deck. Bran, eyes milked white, murmured, "The Night King hunts." Jon set his gaze on the horizon. Then let him hunt. He reached into cloak pocket and drew the small pouch containing black fragments of obsidian dagger gifted by Samwell Tarly upon his departure. He let the weight remind him. Every choice carried blade's edge. Southward awaited dragons, war, perhaps death, perhaps dawn. Wind freshened, filling sail. The silver seal ran before it, headed for cliffs where a 1,000-year secret nested beneath stone. Behind, the north braced under gathering storm, banners snapping like anxious hearts. And somewhere in winter's shadow, the Night King marked each pulse of mortal courage with patient, icy hunger, the music of bones snapping echoing faint beneath thundering skies. But on that ship's deck, amidst salt and snow, hope stood taller than fear. For the first time in long memory, wolf and dragon had sworn one song, and songs, sung true, could shake even the silence of the dead. The first gale struck the Silver Seal 2 nights after the dead men on the Whale, when the ship had cleared the lee of Skagos and run into the open shivering sea. It announced itself as a hollow roar, a distant beast pacing across the water. Sailors paused over coils of line, tasting the wind like wolves scenting prey. Above them, the topsail shuddered. The rigging began to sing. Jon stood at the starboard rail, cloak thrashed about his legs, and watched the horizon darken into a bruised, boiling wall. Lightning flickered inside those clouds, pale veins sketched upon a vast black heart. Bran, lashed in his wicker seat, opened eyes white as moonstone and whispered that the storm would break things before it passed. Davos cursed the boy's knack for understatement, then set the crew reefing canvas down to bare poles. The first sheet of rain hit like hurled gravel, needling through wool and leather to skin. The deck heaved. Masts groaned. The figurehead wolffish reared as though fighting the waves themselves. Jon staggered toward the helm where Captain Storm, feet planted wide, hauled on the tiller as if wrestling a kraken. Through the tumult, Jon glimpsed crews at every station. Mira knotted extra lashings around Bran. Gendry hammered wedges into the forehatch to keep seawater out. The youngest deckhand, a boy no older than Rickon, scuttled along the lee rail scooping hailstones off the scuppers with his bare hands. Their faces wore the same mingled fear and focus Jon had seen on fields of battle. The sea was a foe without banners, yet no less murderous. Wall after wall of water hammered the hull, each strike a smith's anvil ringing through the timbers. Lightning speared down, bright enough to etch the bones beneath knuckles on the wheel spokes. For heartbeats, the storm became a realm of stark negatives. Faces thrown into bleached relief, rigging lines drawn coal-black against blue-white sky, then all plunged back into clanging darkness as thunder answered. Jon strapped himself to the main mast, helping haul down the last scrap of sail, arms burning with strain. The storm's howl swallowed speech. Orders became gestures, rope-slashing arcs of movement. Yet the seal endured, keel knifing through surging hollows, prow climbing slopes of green water foamed white at the crests. Hours bled into one another. Jon lost count of how many times the deck stood near vertical beneath him, or how often icy spray punched breath from lungs. When at last the wind's voice cracked and faltered, he found himself staring at a sky split with ragged stars. The clouds fled south in tatters. The moon hung low, a half-melted coin. Dawn smoldered under the eastern lip of world, faint and gray but certain. The sea settled to long, slow swells flecked with shattered starlight. Jon unlaced his wrists from the mast, numb fingers slick with tar and salt. Crewmen slumped where they stood, some sobbing with relief, others silent as stones. Bran spoke first, voice thin over the slap of water. "That storm was sent by no god," he said. "It was the Night King knocking upon the door of dusk, testing the latch." No one answered. Men knocked salt from their beards, women wrung water from hair, but all cast wary eyes astern as though expecting the sea itself to rise and give chase. They spent the morning repairing, splicing rigging, plugging seams, bailing water from the hold. Gendry's portable forge hissed like a viper each time he plunged red iron into a barrel of seawater. Davos calculated ration counts, now lower by half a week thanks to soaked flour casks, and cursed again. Jon helped wherever hands were needed, hauling spars, stitching canvas, never far from Bran's seat where the boy seemed both present and distant, listening to currents beyond sight. By mid-afternoon, the lookout cried land. A sliver of pallid cliff rising from heath-green slopes. Wyman Manderley's charts named it the Wolf's Teeth, a pair of limestone fingers marking the entrance to the hidden harbor beneath the white cliffs. The crew furled remaining sail and took to oars. The tide was rising, seething in narrow channels between submerged reefs. One wrong stroke and the seal would join the bleached ribs of other unlucky hulls teased by seabirds along the cliff base. Captain Storm's voice carried calm authority as he called cadence. The men bent backs, oars dipping in perfect rhythm. The air smelled of heather and distant snowmelt carried out by river. Somewhere inland, wolves howled, a wild, eerie greeting. The inlet appeared between chalk palisades, a slit barely twice the ship's beam. Sea mist drifted like breath from a sleeping giant. Bran directed them starboard toward a half-collapsed sea cave. Jon glimpsed ancient stone steps carved into the cliff face, leading up to a gaping arch shaped grotesquely like a dragon's open jaws. The tide surged, lifted the seal, carried her nose first into dark. Water echoed inside, multiplied into cavernous growls. Torches were lit, their oily flame pushing back cold shadows to reveal stalactites fused into pillars. At the far end, a stone pier jutted where narrow catacomb tunnels yawned beyond. They moored. Jon, Davos, Mira, Gendry, and 4 guards armed with dragonglass spears disembarked, boots ringing on slick rock. Bran remained on the ship, eyes half closed. "You need light," he murmured. "The egg drinks light." So they took pitch-soaked torches, each flame sputtering under cavern damp. The tunnels wound in corkscrew descent, steps worn smooth by centuries of tides. Carvings lined the walls. Spirals, WYRM runes, shapes of 3-headed dragons interlaced with weirwood leaves. Gendry traced one with rough fingertip. "Old Valyrian craft," he muttered. "Before the doom." Mira shivered though the air lay still. They reached a circular chamber at last. A place of broken pillars and collapsed ceiling where moonlight speared through fissures to spill upon a pedestal of fused black stone. Upon that plinth sat a single egg. It was smaller than Daenerys' famed hatchlings had been, more goose than ostrich, but its shell shimmered in colors impossible to name. Indigo shot with ember sparks, silver that rippled into green then into heartblood red with every tilt of torch or head. Seemed to pulse, drawing breath. Jon approached, senses narrowing until footfalls echoed like war drums. Heat radiated not outward but inward, as though the air leaned toward the egg. He reached gloved fingers, half expecting dragon fire. The shell felt cool, slick as river stone in winter. When he lifted it, weight surprised him, denser than iron though no bigger than a child's skull. Under his palms a faint vibration thrummed, heartbeats searching for mother's song. Davos exhaled. "Well, that's worth a kingdom." He turned slowly, eyes cataloging every shadow. "Let's leave before something else in here wakes hungry." Retracing steps proved harder with treasure in arms. Jon moved carefully, mindful of slick algae, the echoes of water dripping in black. Once he thought he heard scratching from deeper passageways, like claws on slate, but when they paused, nothing. Still, they hastened. The pedestal chamber receded behind folds of darkness until only torch glow haloed around corners. At last, the cavern mouth opened, starlight reflecting off tide pools. They boarded, stowed the egg in burlap nested inside a box of boiled wool and hay. Bran touched lid and smiled faintly. "The dragon stirs," he said, "but it is not yet born. Dragonstone will quicken it." Wind shifted overnight, filling sails with steady breath out of the northwest, pushing the seal along the Bravosi lane. Days blurred. They glimpsed ghostly sails of distant Ibn whalers, traded hail with a Myrish cog returning north half-empty, skirted islands where ruins of Valyrian outposts crumbled into the sea. Twice they saw eerie blue glows far on midnight horizon, strange auroras rippling above water, and the crew whispered that the Night King froze even the sky now. Bran said nothing, but his white eyes tracked those lights until they faded. On the 9th day, squalls cleared to reveal Dragonstone's jagged silhouette. The island rose like a black claw from slate-gray waters, cliffs serrated, spires of ancient dragon-forged stone clawing sky. Smoke curled from vents near the volcano's caldera, faint but constant. As they rounded a headland, the Red Woman's lore proved true. Stone dragons of colossal scale jutted along battlements, beasts frozen mid-roar. And between those fanged jaws flew banners of crimson upon black, snapping in sea wind. 3-headed dragons alive once more. Drums echoed from the castle quay as the seal approached, and skiffs rowed out to intercept. Jon ordered sails furled, deck cleared of weapons besides peace ties. Davos stood at his side, jaw tight. "Last time I came here I smuggled onions," he remarked. "Better cargo today, eh?" The greeting party wore unsullied copper masks, spears trimmed in black silk. A tall woman with silver hair bound in braids of Valyrian style stood at their head, armor gleaming like moonlit coal. Behind her lumbered a massive Dothraki bloodrider, tattooed scalp, curved arak at hip, and flanking both, a small council of scribes bearing ledgers. The woman stepped forward as Jon descended gangplank with Bran and Davos. Her violet eyes swept over the direwolf emblem on his cloak. "I am Ser Gianna Waters, sworn Queen's Knight," she announced in musical common. "Whom do I greet at Dragonstone's gate?" Jon bowed. "Jon Targaryen, son of Rhaegar and Lyanna Stark, called Snow though no longer, king of the North by the will of its lords, and by necessity of a war beyond crowns." He straightened. "I seek audience with Queen Daenerys Stormborn to beg alliance against the dead." A ripple passed among escorts. The Dothraki spat onto deck, muttering. Ser Gianna raised a brow. "Your claim is known to her grace. Rumors ride faster than ravens. She will judge truth in person." She turned, gesturing. "Leave weapons aboard save a single blade each, and bring what gift you carry in that crate." Our lore masters felt its heartbeat from the battlements. Gendry and 2 guards hefted crate carefully. Jon slung Longclaw at hip, peace tie taut. Davos retained a dirk. Bran remained in his chair, Mira pushing behind. They followed the escort along quay carved from fused black glass, up serpentine steps between looming stone dragons whose eyes glimmered as though coals burned within. Sulfur scented the wind. Far above, gulls cried. Great bronze doors opened onto the high hall where once Stannis brooded. Now candles burned in every niche, banners draped from rafters, and braziers of carved obsidian blazed. At the far end, upon a throne shaped of molten swords fused by dragonfire centuries ago, sat Daenerys Targaryen. Her hair fell in pale river braids. Her gown of dark crimson scaled silk clung like living flame. Grey Worm stood at her shoulder, Master Missandei at flank. Tyrion Lannister lounged nearby scribbling notes, and Varys watched from shadowed alcove, eyes assessing. Jon halted, felt heat of brazier on cheek, cold of salt spray on back. He bowed. Scribes murmured, quills scratching. The egg in Gendry's arms thrummed, casting colored gleams on polished floor. Daenerys rose. "The hall whispers you are kin," she said, her voice soft yet ringing. "Son of my lost brother, hidden beneath winter's cloak. Show me your eyes." Jon met her gaze. Hers were violet, ancient. His were gray, stark. He felt no dragonfire stirring, yet something in his blood hummed like bowstring drawn, ready to sing. She descended steps slow. "I see father's sorrow in them," she murmured. but also the north's ice. She extended a hand, delicate yet certain, and brushed the pommel of long claw. Valyrian steel of Mormont make, carried by my kin. Perhaps you speak truth. Tyrion cleared throat. Your grace, get to hold truth after tea. Mayhaps. The dead, he claims, march. Jon nodded. I have seen them. I have slain whites, watched friends perish then rise. The wall will fall within moons. Only dragonfire turns them to ash. Daenerys studied him. I have dragons, yet dragons must eat, and winter skies starve them. Why risk them for a north that bent knee to Robert then rose for Bolton? Because when the dead win, Jon said, thrones become cairn stones, and crowns freeze to skulls. Death does not kneel. He stepped aside. Gendry advanced, set crate at her feet, lifted lid. The egg shimmered like lightning trapped underwater. Gasps fanned through hall. Drogon, the largest dragon, perched upon battlements outside, roared a distant answer, rattling stained glass panes. From your blood's homeland, Jon said. Its heart sleeps still. Hatch it. Let it burn the dead earth clean. He swallowed. If you fly with me north, I will bend the knee, though my people may hate me for it. Ice or iron, we choose one. Daenerys regarded egg, then Jon. Silence thickened until Missandei's quill scratched. Bran broke it with soft words. Ice and fire met here before either of us breathed. Their song must be sung again, or the world ends silent. Ice turned to him. Tyrion blinked. Daenerys's gaze softened. She crouched before Bran, palm to his brow. You are broken. I am mended differently, Bran answered. I am the memory of all men. I watched Aegon ride Balerion, saw old guys burn, felt the children carve runes into ice. I know truth when it speaks. His milky eyes gleamed. Jon speaks, so does this egg. The Night King hunts both. Daenerys exhaled. Then let him find us together. She rose, turning to her counsel. Prepare ravens to every banner. Dorne, reach Stormlands. Summon them here. We sail north within a fortnight. She faced Jon. But you will not kneel. You will stand with me as equal. Fire and ice, twin across the world's wound. Jon felt weight lift. He inclined head. Then let us mend the wound. Tyrion sighed. I knew we'd end at war with winter. I just wished for one quiet vineyard first. He grinned crookedly. But if we live, I expect casks of northern ice wine. Varys chuckled in silken whisper. And I, quiet halls without spiders. Grey Worm only nodded. That night, fires blazed atop Dragonstone's highest parapets. They carried the egg to the ancient forge where dragon flames still licked through cracks in basalt. Drogon, regal, Viserion circled overhead, wings beating thunder. Jon stood beside Daenerys, Bran in his chair between. She placed egg upon anvil of black glass. Bran's hand fluttered up, fingertips brushing shell. A whisper like wind through crypts filled the forge. The egg's colors churned, darkening to crimson, then sunburst gold. Regal swooped, exhaling gout of emerald fire upon open vents. Flames roared up furnace flues, enveloping egg. Daenerys did not flinch. Jon felt heat like summers he never knew. The shell fissured with crackling sound, lines of molten light. Then it shattered outward, shards spinning like stars, and a dragonet spilled onto anvil. Scales bronze flecked with topaz, wings translucent, eyes luminous violet. It screeched, voice pure and terrible, and the larger dragons answered across sky. Daenerys caught creature in gloved hands. A curled tail round her wrist, testing small fangs on leather. She laughed, light, free. His name shall be Elysir, she declared, for the sword that guards realms of men. The dragonet chirped, flame licking between teeth. Jon met her eyes. In that moment, he saw no queen or conqueror, only a woman who dared mother flame. She saw in him no rival, only ice strong enough to temper steel. Behind them, Bran's pupils darkened, seeing futures spin outward. Armies of undead clashing with valiant ranks, dragons wheeling under moon, and within it all, fire and ice dancing together at last. Weeks passed in fevered preparation. Ships gathered, great cog of pentos laden with grain, sleek Lysini transports with silk and oranges, battered Northman whalers armed with scorpion bolts. Wildlings under Tormund journeyed south across snow-clogged passes, guided by ravens. Knights of the Vale, led by young Lord Robert at Sansa's urging, marched down the King's Road. Even a delegation of Ironborn under Yara Greyjoy arrived, offering fast longships for coastal raids. The realm, fractured, found slender thread of unity in terror of night. On the eve of departure north, Jon and Daenerys stood upon windswept cliff where Aegon the Conqueror once plotted Westeros's fate. Alysir perched on Jon's forearm now. As he and Daenerys discovered, the dragonet favored both equally, perhaps a sign of shared blood. Drogon's sword circles above like a dark comet, wings stirring whitecaps far below. Moon gilded the pair in argent. "You still carry wolf more than dragon," she said, brushing stray snow from his collar. "And you carry more fire than any sun," he answered. She smiled, but shadows rimmed her eyes. "The War of Thrones ends when walkers break the wall. Did we wake dragons only to see the world freeze? Or did we wake them to thaw what froze long ago?" He stroked Alysir's neck. "Ice alone preserves death. Fire alone consumes life. Together they forge steel. We are steel, you and I." Bran saw it. She stared toward northern void, where horizon melted into black. "Then let's be blade and bearer. And if we shatter, let the world remember the strike." He clasped her hand, warmth seeping through gloves. Stars wheeled overhead, dragons wheeled below, and between those scales of sky and sea stood two souls poised upon cusp of dawn or doom. None could know which note the song of ice and fire would strike first, shiver of deepest cold or flare of brightest flame. But in that breath, hope sang louder than fear. Dawn colored clouds saffron. Horns blared across bays. Time to sail. Fleets unfurled canvas. Masts bristled like forest newly in leaf. Snowflakes drifted even here now. Winter chased them southwards like a relentless tide. Jon and Daenerys descended path to waiting war council. Alysir clinging to Jon's shoulder, tail wrapped about his neck like living torque. At harbor, banners of wolf and dragon entwined upon a single spar, while men loaded crates of dragonglass arrows forged beneath Dragonstone's mountain. Northwards lay the wall and the final gate none had breached in 8,000 years. Northwards marched a darkness older than houses, kings, or gods. But northwards also sailed a fleet bearing promise. Hearts beating in defiance, swords forged of songs long dormant, dragons born anew, and memories guiding every oar. When the Silver Seal once more took wind, this time flanked by Dromons, iron-born longships, and swan-prowed galleys, Jon stood at prow beside Daenerys. Ghost howled from quarterdeck. Alysir chirped answer. Water hissed under hulls like pages turning. Behind them, Dragonstone's peak belched one more plume as if bidding farewell. Ahead, the sky glimmered pale rose where sun climbed unseen behind snow clouds. Bran, deep in trance, murmured words only wind heard. The pack survives. And so ice and fire carved wake through winter seas, forging path toward a horizon where living and dead would soon decide whose dawn would break the world, and whose would mend it forever. Salt gusts swept across the deck, stinging cheeks and tangling every loose strand of hair into sea-knotted braids. From the quarterdeck, Jon watched thin ranks of foam hissing past the Silver Seal's hull, each crest whipped flat by winter wind. The fleet maintained a ragged echelon, iron-born longships darting like sharks far on the flanks, lumbering Pentoshi Dromons wallowing under their freight of grain, sleek Vale galleys riding high and swift, banners snapping cobalt and cream. And at center, Dragonstone's black-hulled flagship, Black Horizon, with Daenerys standing beneath its mainsail, hair drifting silver in the cold. Above her, Drogon and Regal wheeled in lazy spirals, shadows crossing the waves, while tiny Alysir clung to Jon's fur cloak, tail looped snug round his neck like a living torque. The dragonet's breath puffed visible streamers of warmth, fragrant with a faint metallic tang. 3 days of steady nor'easter carried them northward faster than any reckoning. Yet the further they climbed the latitudes, the more the world hushed beneath gathering frost. Dolphins no longer harried the bowsprit. Gulls fell away. Even the stars seemed brittle, shivering behind veils of high ice cloud. At night the seas burned ghost blue with aurora, curtains of sapphire fire rippling across sky and sea alike until horizon vanished. Sailors muttered warding charms. Kissed shards of dragonglass hung at their throats. On the fourth dawn, a column of black smoke smudged the sky ahead. No shipwreck, but Hardhome's silhouette, charred remains of wildling settlement raised seasons ago. Grey worms signaled the fleet to slow. Longboats launched, scouting the coast. Jon, Davos, and Tyrion rowed in first skiff. Elysir tucked into a wicker carrier strapped across Jon's chest, small claws pricking leather. The beach crunched under boots. Driftwood petrified by brine and frost, ribs of long-abandoned boats jutting at angles like broken prayers. Nothing moved save snow devils swirling between burnt palisade posts. Yet Jon felt the place thrum, a pulse like an empty drum sounding beneath his feet. Tormund arrived with second party, red beard caked with rime. He spat. Dead ground. Smells like them. He drew a dragonglass hatchet, its translucent edge smoking faint where it met the dawn chill. Bran's ravens, wings white-rimmed, fluttered down to perch on a shattered totem. The boy's voice spoke through them. They passed here 2 nights ago, 10,000, maybe more, south and west, hugging shore. They do not need roads, only cold. Feathers ruffled as if in dread. Tyrion shivered despite triple layers of wool. 10,000 corpses that do not eat, do not rest. Lovely. Jon knelt, touching snow. Under thin crust, something black glinted. Obsidian arrowhead left from last desperate fight between free folk and night spawn. He pocketed it. We keep moving. The walls 70 leagues ahead. Back aboard, Daenerys listened grimly. She traced course upon chart with nail, moving pins southward from Hardhome toward the wall's eastern anchor. If they skirt the coast, Eastwatch will feel them first, and our dragons must fly in gale winds to reach it. Jon met her eyes. We beat them there or die on road behind. Orders rippled. The fleet altered heading, hugging coastline whenever shoals allowed. All canvas strained. Snow fell thicker each hour. Flurries first, then stinging grains carried sideways that abraded exposed skin raw. Lookouts cried warnings as growlers drifted south. Blue icebergs calved from frozen bays, grinding like slow millstones. Longships slalomed between floes. Dramens scraped hulls, showering splinters of frozen pitch. Twice they lost sight of Drogon's dark bulk through whiteout. Horn blasts guided him back. On the 6th night, Jon stood beside Daenerys atop Black Horizon's quarterdeck. Lanterns swung, casting gold arcs across her face. We could land west of Skane, she suggested, voice low above wind. March overland, reach Castle Black sooner than Eastwatch by sea. Jon weighed it. Ice lakes won't bear wagons. Ghost knows forest paths, but not for wagons of dragonglass. He held the rail, knuckles pale. Eastwatch still stands. Tallet promised ravens daily. None have come. That either means ravens grounded by storm or... He trailed off. Or silence under ice, Daenerys finished. Elysir chirped, wings fluttering under cloak. He crawled onto the rail, turned muzzle northwest, and hissed. A sound Jon had never heard from him, thin but furious. Regal, aloft, echoed with distant bellow. Daenerys stiffened. They smell something. From aft. Lookout cried, lights astern.
Jon spoon.
Across the Black Sea, 3 pinpricks of blue shimmered where no sail carried flame. The points bobbed, too steady for lanterns, too cold for oil. Bran's raven voice croaked from masthead. Cold candles. They come. Daenerys lifted hand. Drogon, the great dragon banked, folding wings in dive, red-black furnace blazing between jaws. He streaked aft, trailing sparks, and loosed a torrent of fire upon sea.
Steam geysert heavenward, his so lud ihrs Rang.
The lights vanished behind veils of mist, but when steam cleared, they reappeared nearer, unblinking, blue as glacier hearts. Beneath each a shape-breasted waves. Dead horses frozen to skeleton, riders carrion pale, eyes incandescent. Arrows loosed from iron-borne decks struck water short. Catapult stones hurled from dramens splashed wide. The dead did not swerve, riding ice flows like steeds. Jon ran to Bell. Clash, clash, fleet mustered, reforming spearheads. Drogon roared again, this time flame turning sea to boiling cauldron 10 ships' length ahead of White's. Another plume from regal, emerald conflagration. Yet the lights endured, gliding through flame as if shielded by unseen cold. Drogon back-winged, uncertain. Bran's raven voice rasped, "These are memory killers, lieutenants of night. Their fire is the flame of forgetting." Daenerys spat a Valyrian oath. She mounted Drogon where he hovered above quarterdeck, vaulted onto his back to strap harness. Jon caught her arm. "You'll exhaust him beating water. Let them meet land. They will harry our rearguard night after night," she argued. Ice flashed violet. A Leaser screeched from Jon's shoulder, as though echoing her fury. Yet she saw Jon's logic. Reluctant, she stroked Drogon's neck. "Circle high. Watch them." The dragon obeyed, climbing. Fleet pressed on. The lights followed at measured distance, patient, tireless. Sailors posted stern watch in pairs so none would stare too long into blue glow. Men who did complained later their dreams felt scraped hollow, memories missing names. Tyrion conducted shifts accordingly, scribbling notes on human psyche's brittle edge with something close to ghoulish fascination. Davos leaned rail beside Jon. What would old Maester Aemon say, seeing dragon flame fail? He shivered. "Hope is our bread. They steal crumbs. Then we'll bake bigger loaves," Jon replied, though doubt gnawed. The next dawn brought towering ice cliffs. Frozen spray etched to rock, gullies choked with drift. Eastwatch by the sea peeked from behind promontory. Timber palisade, beacon tower leaning seaward, jetty encrusted in hoarfrost. No smoke rose.
No gulkrei. Flagpole bare.
Heart pounded, too quiet. Black horizon sounded horn 3 times. Echo returned hollow. Jon, Daenerys, Tormund, Grey Worm, and a company of unsullied rowed ashore. Ghost bounded ahead, snout low. Jon drew Longclaw, the pommel wolf snarling. Footing treacherous on ice-rimmed steps up from beach to main gate. They found portcullis torn half loose, bars bent outward as by colossal hand. Inside courtyard, snowdrifts lay undisturbed save one set of tracks leading inward. Large boot prints overlaid by crisp pattern of claws. Torches ignited in sconces revealed carnage. Broken ballista, barrels of tar smashed, bodies frozen mid-gesture. Some wore black of Night's Watch, others furs of free folk recently garrisoned. All bore shards of ice in chest or neck, wounds rimed with frost. Eyes blank. They had not risen. Each corpse decapitated post-mortem. Dragonglass daggers protruded from severed neck stumps. Jon recognized style, Ed Tollett's grim prudence. They climbed tower stairs. In Beacon Room, they found Dolorous Ed himself, slumped against brazier long cold, sword across knees, eyes closed. A final sliver of obsidian jammed through his own heart. Paper scrap clenched in fist. Jon pried free, throat tight. The note, written in shaky hand. Jon, wall lost at Icemark. Fire holds gate 1 dawn, shatters next. Night King rode Viserion. We cut bridge to slow. Lost Eastwatch dawn after. Dragonglass nearly spent. Hold north. Remember the muttering. A smudge obscured last line, blood or ink. Jon folded parchment, eyes stinging. Tormund set broad hand on shoulder, silent. Daenerys stood at arrow slit staring toward walls, broken spine visible inland. A white scar jagged with bluish fractures. Far-off roar of cracking ice drifted on wind. She breathed, "We are too late." Jon turned. Not too late to avenge him, to save living south. His voice rough. They descended. Outside, horn summoning fleet to harbor. Rhaegal descended to perch on ruined watchtower. Drogon remained aloft, sensing threat. Elysir crawled from Jon's collar, wings flexing. He hissed higher pitch. Jon followed gaze inland, faint haze of snow swirling unnaturally, column advancing across wastes toward wall breach. An army, black silhouettes marching in perfect silence, blue lights at their head. Tormund grinned wolfishly, though fear glinted. They come. Grey worms snapped commands. Unsullied formed shield wall at fortress gate. Ironborn rushed to man ballista on jetty. Vale archers strung bows with dragonglass-tipped arrows newly crafted at Dragonstone. Bran, guided ashore by Mira, positioned his wicker seat within gatehouse arch, hands resting on weirwood-carved staff. Eyes rolled white. "I will slow them," he whispered. Snow eddied round his chair, swirling into spirals. Jon and Daenerys stepped to parapet. Fleet's dragons beat enormous wings, unsettled, breath-pluming steam. Jon felt weight of sword, crown, duty as anchor. He laid hand atop Daenerys's. "Line must hold here so Winterfell may ready." She nodded, squeezing back. Rhaegal below trumpeted, wings flaring, impatient for flight. First white appeared on horizon. Skeleton in tatters, frost clinging like armor. Many followed, too many to count. Their march stirred little snow, as though cold itself parted. The memory killers rode foremost, their eyes twin pyres of azure. They raised spears tipped with ice-burning pale fire. Behind them glided a shape larger than all. A dragon corpse, wings patched with ice, ridges glowing blue along spine. Viserion. Upon his neck sat Night King, armor of rime, gaze fixed upon Eastwatch beacon. Distance swallowed noise, but dread throbbed louder than drums. Daenerys hissed breath. "Brother," she whispered, tears glistening. Jon tightened grip on her hand. "We end his torment." She mounted Drogon as Rhaegal launched beside. Elysir leapt to Jon's shoulder, but Jon handed him to Tyrion, who had climbed rampart. "Keep him," Jon said. "If I fall, see him grow." Tyrion opened mouth to protest. Jon was already gone, clambering downstairs to join Tormund's front. Shield wall braced outside collapsed gate, ranks 3 deep. Unsullied spears lowered, dragonglass glinting dull. Wildlings filled gaps, axes ready. Ironborn harpoons loaded. Vale knights on left flank prepared couched lances for countercharge across ice-slick terrain. Snow-stung eyes, wind rising. Night King halted column a stone's throw beyond bow range. He rose atop Viserion, lifted one arm. The memory killers advanced, spear staves scraping frost, screeching sound like steel on glass. Bran's head snapped upright, he spread fingers. Wind swirl shifted suddenly, gusting crosswise, throwing snow into blinding veil between armies. In that brief screen, Night King gestured, memory killers drove spears into ground. Blue furls of flame raced along ice, carving channels glowing eerie. Snow veil evaporated, revealing lines of runes blazing in frost outside Eastwatch walls. A sigil ancient and forbidding. Bran's body jerked as though struck. Crystals of rime spread along his staff, creeping up sleeves. Jon shouted, "Loose!" Arrows launched, arcs of onyx rain. Many found targets. Scores of whites toppled, dragonglass burning black-blue within bones. But as each fell, others climbed over. Memory killers deflected arrows midair with icy vortices. Then whites charged, silent, a tidal bore of dead. Shock hit shield wall, first rank buckled then braced. Spears punched through skull, chest, pelvis. Bones shattered like brittle glass. Jon swung long claw, Valyrian steel singing, cleaving 2 whites in one arc, pivoted, decapitated third. Tormund roared, axe cracking a blue knight helm. Ghost lunged and tore, snout coated in frost and blood dust. Unsullied discipline held line. Wildlings filled gaps where men fell, but the dead climbed bodies creating ramparts of their own. Above, Drogon dived, fire torrent scything across ranks. Whole swath vaporized, bones exploding to ash. Rhaegal mirrored in emerald blaze. Yet when fire passed over memory killers, they raised spears, absorbing flame into rime crystals that glowed hotter, merging heat with cold until steam burst skyward. Drogon veered with frustrated roar. Viserion answered, opening maw to exhale searing jet of blue fire. It struck Drogon on flank, scales splintering. Drogon shrieked, banking hard, smoke trailing where ice fire sizzled. Daenerys clung, guiding him upward. Rhaegal swooped to shield brother, but second blast clipped his tail, severing webbing. He faltered, spiraled erratically before stabilizing. On ground, Jon hacked until arms numb. Corpses piled waist-high. Night King advanced slowly, Viserion's wings churning blizzards that lashed defenders. Bran lifted staff, eyes blazing green now instead of white. The runes the Night King drew pulsed, clashing with green halo sprouting from ground around Bran's chair. Roots of unseen trees bursting through stone, wrapping legs of whites, dragging them earthward. Memory killers turned spears upon Bran, hurling shards of ice. Mira threw herself in front, shield shattering under impact. She fell, shoulder bleeding black. Jon saw arrow loops littered with spent quivers. Vale knights charged left flank, skidding across ice to slam into undead side. Lances impaled 3 deep but snapped. Knights drew swords, fighting in melee. Tormund bellowed at Jon, pointing. Night King now within arrow shot, but all archers busy. Jon tore free, scrambling across heaps of corpses, searching vantage. He spotted ballista pivoted on tower corner, its bolt black glass as long as a joust lance. Gendry manned winch alone. His apprentice lay dead. Jon climbed, shouted. Gendry nodded, cranked heavy mechanism. Drogon circled low, blooded but unbowed. Jon yelled up, "Drive him right!" Daenerys heard, guiding Drogon to strafe left side of undead vanguard. Viserion rose to intercept, pivoting. Night King's pale face turned toward Drogon, but his back now angled to ballista line. Gendry sighted, teeth gritted. Jon laid hand on lever. Viserion inhaled, throat glowing cobalt. Drogon banking, twisting. Jon shouted, "Now!" Gendry released. The bolt whistled, slicing air. It struck Viserion just behind wing joint, penetrated, emerging through chest. Dragonglass erupted in starburst of shards within undead flesh. Blue roar choked to cough. Viserion faltered. Night King clutched spines to steady but too late. Dragon's wing folded, body plummeting, smashing into frozen surf beyond wall, raising geyser of shattered ice. Momentary hush rippled. Whites staggered, many collapsing as enchantment stuttered. Memory killers screamed, a sound like splitting glaciers, and hurled spears toward tower. Jon yanked Gendry down. Spears grazed parapet, exploding stone to powder. One shard sliced Jon's cheek, freezing flesh instantly, numbing. Night King rose from water, armor rimed, eyes burning brighter. He strode across ice floes toward shore, leaving cracks spidering behind. Bran convulsed, green glow throbbing. "The heart, break the heart," he whispered through blood-spattered lips. Jon remembered stories. Night King's creation by children. Dragonglass dagger to heart of man bound to weirwood, forging winter demon. If shard remained, perhaps hidden by bone of breastplate. Daenerys descended, Drogon crashing onto courtyard across from Jon. She dismounted, eyes blazing fury. "We finish this together." Jon leapt onto Drogon behind her. Dragonid Elysir, freed from Tyrion's grip amid chaos, fluttered up to perch between spines ahead. His scales gleamed bronze, tiny chest heaving. They launched. Night King lifted new spear of ice conjured from thin air. Drogon climbed, banked. Spear flung skyward, clipping trailing edge of left wing, tearing membrane. Drogon roared but kept flight. They arced, then dove Valyrian steel blade held by Jon, extended from saddle harness. As they swooped, Daenerys shrieked words of old Valyria, a crescendo of command. Fire erupted in Drogon's throat, not outward but channeled along blade. Longclaw ignited, steel glowing white-yellow. They passed over Night King at breakneck speed. Jon plunged flaming sword downward. The blade scraped across rime armor, slicing into collar, cleaving pauldron. Blue frost burst like shattered sapphire. Longclaw's flames sputtered but persisted. Drogon pulled up, banking for second pass. Night King staggered, ice smoking along wound. He reached to chest, fingers scraping something embedded. Shard of obsidian fused with heart centuries. Cracks spidered across armor. Archers rallied, loosing last volley of glass shafts. Many struck wights and memory killers, thinning ranks, but some peppered Night King. Each arrow fizzed in midair, melting before contact, ward still formidable. Bran's head jerked skyward. Green erupted more fiercely, roots cracking ground outward from his chair, snaring dozens of corpses, dragging them deep until snow collapsed into holes exhaling steam. Viserion's carcass lurched on distant shore, wings twitching, trying to rise but failing, bolt still lodged. Knots of wights clustered, attempting to free spear brethren from dragonglass tethers, but wildlings harried them with axes. Drogon's second dive. Night King prepared another spear. Jon tightened grip, Daenerys urging dragon into barrel roll. As they neared, Aleser leapt, wings beating furiously. The little dragon streaked like bronze comet, jaws wide, spewing thin lance of yellow flame. It struck the spear mid-throw, melting tip, sending molten shards spraying. Night King flinched, first hint of surprise. Drogon leveled feet above ground. Jon leapt from saddle, rolling across snow, coming upright within arm's reach of Night King. Valyrian steel scorched white. Night King swung broken shaft, parried. Impact sent shockwave of chill through blade, dimming flame. Jon pressed, hacking at arm, at helm. Ice splintered but reknit. Cold burned through gloves, blistering skin. Drogon circled overhead, Daenerys chanting in deep voice, forging an answering roar in dragon's throat. She sent torrent of fire, but narrow, threaded, so as not to scorch Jon. Night King raised frost barrier. Flames struck invisible wall, blossoming outward around, forming ring of steam shielding duel. Inside ring, world shrank to Jon, sword, shimmering frost demon. Blows traded. Steel swathed in fire against spear haft of jagged ice. Each clash hissed as elements warred. Night King quick, graceful as falling snowflake. Jon fueled by grief and fury. Blue eyes like twin winter moons bored into him. Memory killers converged, but Tormund and Grey Worm led charge that intercepted, weapons of glass carving arcs of black-blue flame. Knights formed wedge, clearing Jon's perimeter. Night King feinted, thrust spear toward Jon's heart. Jon parried, riposte slicing diagonal across chest plate. Crack widened. Through gap glimmered black obsidian lodged, pulsing azure. Jon saw his opening, dove forward, grip reversed, plunged Longclaw point first into fissure. Steel met stone. Fire flared white. Explosion of steam and shards. Night King uttered first sound, inhuman rasp, then hand clamped Jon's throat, grip ice-searing flesh. Jon gasped, vision spotting. Flame flickered on blade. Sudden screech overhead. Aleser descending, wings whirring, tiny teeth bared. The dragonet latched onto Night King's helm rim, claws scratching sparks on frost. Mouth gout small jet of molten fire directly into crater wound. Ice escalated meltdown. Obsidian core glowed red. Night King convulsed, grip loosening. Jon mustered final strength, twisting sword, driving deeper. Crack like glacier calving split air. Blue light blazed through seams of Night King's body, consuming him from heart outward. Eyes flared, then shattered into powder. Body fissured, falling to fragments of rime and wind-blown ash. Spear clattered, a slush of melting ice, then nothing. Silence poured over battlefield, broken by stuttering moans as memory killers faltered. Their blue eyes winked out. They collapsed in unison, ice spears shattering. Whites stiffened mid-stride, limbs jerking as unseen strings cut. One by one they toppled, clattering bones, sighing rot. Snow Squall died to whisper. Jon sagged to knees, breath steam, throat blistered iceburn. A leaser fluttered, chittering triumph, settled on his shoulder. Longclaw dimmed, metal cooling. He looked around, unsullied catching breath, wildlings roaring victory, Vale knights dismounting to clasp hands in disbelief. Grey Worm stood over Tormund, both laughing, breath clouds mixing. Daenerys landed Drogon near Crater of Rime. She rushed to Jon, eyes shining with relief and grief both. They embraced, steam rising from wet furs. Jon rasped, voice raw, "Is it done?" Bran's voice floated on breeze. "The head is severed, but the body lingers in forgotten places. Yet dawn begins. Over distant cliffs, eastern sky brightened pink, first color besides blood and frost in days. The fleet's horns sounded exultant notes, echoing across icy sea. Survivors climbed walls, waving banners of wolf and dragon entwined. Ash of scattered whites drifted, glittering in sunrise like strange snow of silver dust. Later, pyres burned, this time for the Watch brothers who would not rise again. Dolorous Ed's body, honored first, set ablaze upon raft pushed seaward. Jon spoke words, voice hoarse. He kept his vow beyond end. Flames flickered across water, drawing tears even from Ironborn. Brienne arrived with message ravens. Winterfell secured. Sansa's forces repelled a flanking dead host that faltered once Night King fell. Bran confirmed connection severed. Yet he warned, some walkers still wander masterless. Ice spiders woken by old magic roam frostfangs, and ancient hatred sleeps lightly. Work remained, but for one day, laughter re-entered throats long clenched. Wildlings and knights shared mead. Daenerys walked battlements, Drogon perched sentinel, allowing children of free folk to touch cooled scales. First-time dragon bowed head for mortal play. A leaser chased snowflakes, tiny bursts of flame turning them to mist. Ghost lay beside Jon near hearth, muzzle across boots, snoring. Inside ruined mess hall, Tyrion built pyramid of upturned helmets for dice game with Davos, Gendry, and even stern Grey Worm. Coins clinked, curses flew. Varys watched, faint smile ghosting. Jon and Daenerys met Bran beneath shattered weirwood branch embedded in courtyard. Boy's eyes normal now, though silver threads streaked hair. The song shifts, he said, but its last verse yet unsung. Daenerys brushed snow from branch, responding, "We'll write it together." Jon looked toward south where kings and queens still quarreled. There are other wars. Lions, roses, krakens unwilling to bend. Let them come, she answered. The pack stands. He smiled, and the dragons soar. A leaser chirped assent from his shoulder. High overhead, dawn widened, painting sky with hues unseen since summer. Peach, gold, faint lavender. Drogon trumpeted, wings filling light. Regal answered, healers wrapping his wounded tail but spirit unbroken. Snow glittered, no longer blinding but beautiful. Jon felt warmth, part furnace of future fires, part simple human closeness as Daenerys's gloved hand found his. A world damaged yet salvageable stretched before them, blank as snowfall. They would shape it with steel, with mercy, with all lessons carved in ice and flame. They turned toward gate where road south waited. The King's Road now cleared of death for first time in years. Armies would march, halls convene, but that journey belonged to tomorrow. Today belonged to breath, to the living, to the impossible hush after night's deepest fear has finally broken. In that hush, hearts beat, wolves howled.
Dragonstone.
And somewhere in drifting ash of vanquished eternal winter, a new spring's distant music stirred, tentative but undeniable, promising that even in lands of never-ending cold, warmth may yet return. Born of two souls once thought worlds apart, now forging the realm's fate together, step by slow, enduring step. The noon sun hung pale and indifferent above the wind-swept ruin of Eastwatch by the sea, casting little warmth on the labor that followed victory. Frozen corpses, those that had not burst into ash with the Night King's fall, lay in twisted heaps along shattered parapets and through the ragged mouth of the gate. Smoke from purification pyres drifted in languid sheets, stinging eyes and throats alike, but even that bitter reek came as a balm, the odor of final rites, of work that would not need doing twice. For the first time in fathomless seasons, Eastwatch's eastern horizon showed nothing but open water and a broad band of pale sky unlit by ghastly blue flame. Jon Snow, Jon Targaryen, the name still raw on his tongue, stood at the breach in the wall, surveying what remained of the ancient ice. The gash yawned 200 feet high, its jagged edges glittering like broken crystal in the sickly sun. Here, the Night King's dragonfire had bored a tunnel, melting ice in torrents that refroze midfall, leaving twisted pillars and translucent curtains petrified in impossible shapes. Stalactites thick as oaks, draperies thin as onion skin, all tinted in eerie cobalt. Water still wept from those wounds, trickling down to pool in the deep shadow between shattered blocks. He thought of Bran's warning. The head is severed, but the body lingers. This wound was part of that body, an invitation, a reminder of frailty. Footsteps crunched behind him. Tormund Giantsbane joined at the brink, red beard blackened with soot at the tips. He clapped Jon's shoulder, heavy but not unkind. "Could make a good gate, this hole," he said. "One that stays open when we need, shuts when we don't." "With what?" Jon asked, voice hoarse. "Stone won't hold where ice cracked, and we don't have enough ice left to rebuild." "True, but we've got Dragonfire now." Tormund spat, the gobbet freezing before it could hit snow. "Seal it with glass as hot as Drogon's breath. Make a wall the dead cannot melt." Jon considered. Glass, obsidian, dragon glass. The mountain beneath Dragonstone still churned with magma. If they could pour molten obsidian into the breach and set it with dragon flame, they might craft a barrier stronger than the first wall, laced with magic deadly to the dead. Yet such forging required time, labor, and agreement from rulers who thought more of crowns than cold. He would speak to Daenerys and Sansa soon. For now, he nodded to the wildling. "Put the idea to the masons and the smelters. We'll see what can be done." Tormund grinned. "It's good when a king listens to raiders." "I was a raider once," Jon reminded him. "Still am, in hearts that keep score." Tormund chuckled, eyes bright. "And I suppose I'm a sworn man of castles now. Worlds upside down." Regal lay beside Eastwatch's ruined beacon tower, wing wrapped in canvas and splinted with pine spars. Scabrous patches of new scale glimmered where Night King's ice flame had seared flesh days earlier. Maester Medrick from Winterfell, gray-haired but steady-handed, directed healers to smear a salve of dragon's blood, rendered bear fat, and powdered obsidian along the wound. Each application hissed and smoked, but Regal bore it well, golden eyes fixed on the horizon. Drogon, uninjured save for scorched flank, perched atop the tower as sentry, stone dragons at his feet seeming tiny by comparison. Alisir, the bronze hatchling, clambered along the great beast's forearm, testing claws on ridged scales. Drogon permitted the antics, though every so often he rumbled a warning that sent the little one skittering back. Daenerys watched from a scaffolding constructed where parapet once stood. Arms wrapped about herself despite heavy furs, she radiated a weariness deeper than simple fatigue. When Jon climbed to join her, she greeted him with a faint smile, as though saving what strength remained for those moments her men saw her brave. "You should be Abed," he said softly. "And you should," she replied. "But the world hasn't learned to rule itself." Below, unsullied hammered stakes, raising a makeshift palisade across the breach, at least to keep windwolves rather than white wolves at bay. Farther inland, Vale engineers tested catapults loaded with newly forged dragonglass boulders, a deterrent for anything still wandering white out of the Frostfangs. The war, for now, was work. Saws, hammers, furnaces, rosters, inventories. Seldom had victory felt so quiet. "They ask what comes next," Daenerys continued. "Tyrion wants to sail south and press King's Landing while my enemies reel. Varys whispers the same but sweeter. The Ironborn wish to plunder Lannisport under cover of truce." She exhaled a plume of steam. "Yet my every dream since girlhood ended here at this wall. I no longer see the Iron Throne. I see these stones and those graves and the fear behind brave smiles. It doesn't have to end, Jon said. It can begin. She tilted her head. The Iron Throne means one thing only: whose will orders armies. We just proved armies obey hope of life over threat of death. If we ride south together, not to conquer but to show what we saved, maybe those who fear dragons will follow willingly. Daenerys's mouth curved in rueful shadow of a smile. How stark of you, though half dragon. Half Stark, half Targaryen, holy North, he replied. I've no love for that throne of swords. But if sitting on it stops blades drawn on innocence, then I'll sit. You should sit beside. She reached gloved hand, he took it. Frost glittered on clasped leather. I saw your father's ghost on that field, she said. Not the mad King Rhaegar. When you plunged Longclaw, his face flickered in yours. If the South will listen, it will be to you. Jon shook his head. South sees only names written in ledgers of old justice. They won't forget the crown that burned them, no matter my face. Then we show them our faces, all of us, an alliance of houses, of free folk, of dragons and wolves and men sworn to neither. Daenerys lifted chin. The world after winter must be forged new. That world still bleeds, Jon warned. She squeezed his fingers. Then let us bind wounds. Below, the hatchling Elysir launched from Drogon's huge talon, wings beating enthusiastic but awkward strokes. He glided, veered too sharply, crashed into a snowdrift. Drogon rumbled amusement. Jon chuckled, and Daenerys laughed with him. It felt foreign, laughter among broken towers, yet necessary, like breath after a long submersion. 7 days after victory, the last funeral pyre burned low, and Eastwatch garrison stirred into exodus. Too many walls in ruin demanded builders. Too many larders bare demanded harvests. Convoys rolled west along the wall's empty top toward Shadow Tower, where rangers under Ser Dennis Mallister had survived in isolation. Southbound, horse lines carried wounded to Last Hearth, now reclaimed by Lady Lyanna Mormont's swiftly repaired keep. Fishing cogs from T Harbor ferried grain upriver to the villages spared by plague of whites but starved by siege of snow. Jon convened council in the shattered mess hall. A map of Westeros lay spread across ale-stained board, weighed by dragonglass daggers at the corners. Around it sat Daenerys, Tyrion, Davos, Grey Worm, Tormund, Lord Wyman Manderly, whose walrus mustache still smelled strongly of sea salt, and newly arrived Sansa Stark, eyes steeled by the burdens of command in Winterfell. Bran remained on balcony above, silent witness. The bronze hatchling perched on lintel overhead, watching. Tyrion tapped the map. Cersei Lannister waits in King's Landing, her court swollen with sellswords paid from Iron Bank coffers. Reports say Euron Greyjoy's fleet shelters at Blackwater Bay, though half his ships vanished chasing plunder up the narrow sea. The Reach starves under trials of drought and war. Their banners teeter between Tyrell loyalists under Wylis Hightower and Cersei's new vassal, Lord Tarly of Horn Hill. The Stormlands lack a Baratheon, though rumor names Gendry waters favored by small folk. Dorne sits leaderless after their princes died in uprisings. The Sand Snakes now feud with Septons for rule. In sum, the realm is fractured as a pot smashed on cobbles. Sansa leaned forward. And our armies are thin reed with frostbite on roots. Wildlings lost a fourth of numbers. Vale knights half their horses. Unsullied heal wounds slower in this climate. Lord Wyman rumbled. But spirits run high. Bards sing of the breaker of night. Merchants wave our coin. Fishwives name newborns Johnnies and Densnow. He chuckled. Nothing breeds loyalty like a devil slain. Tyrion spread hands. So we have impetus. What we lack is grain, gold, and siege supply for march on capital. Jon considered. Cersei will not treat. She refused truce even when dead marched. Yet we cannot allow her to rebuild walls thicker than those we breached. She will set wildfire under every cobblestone. Daenerys nodded. My dragons alone could break the city, but blood fountains would sour any peace. I will not become Queen of Cinders, then starve her of allies. Davos suggested. Win hearts of Reach and Stormlands. Bring Dorne by oath. Leave Cersei a snake cupped in her own fangs. And seize the Iron Bank, Tyrion added dryly. Without coin, Sel's words slip away. Sansa drummed gloved fingers. Before that, we must crown unity. The realm will not bow to strategy. It bows to story. The story we give must be stronger than fear. Her eyes flicked to Jon, then Daenerys. The pack and the dragons joined burned winter. Let them bind summer. Silence cooled to hush. Tormund whistled long. Wyman's brows shot upward. Jon felt warmth rise to cheeks despite cold hall. Daenerys angled her head, studying Sansa with interest rather than offense. Sansa continued evenly. Nobles whisper you are kin, but rumor and ravens hold brittle. A marriage binds blood, rights, obligation. A single crown forged from north and south may still the clamor long enough to mend. As Lady of Winterfell, I propose it. Jon opened mouth, closed it. He searched Daenerys' face, saw reflection of his own uncertainty. She turned to map, finger circling rivers converging at rendezvous of armies. Her breath misted. Marriage for realm, not for hearts, she said softly, eyes distant. Yet hearts often follow where duty leads if given soil. Tyrion smirked. Such soil may host more than dragon lilies. Grey Worm shifted uncomfortably at political talk. Tormund laughed. You'll make pups breathe fire. Think of battle. Daenerys lifted her hand, stilling jests. She regarded Sansa. You would give your brother to a queen once feared as tyrant by your lords? I trust my brother, Sansa replied, and I have seen what tyrants do when alone. Better to anchor dragons than chase them. Jon found voice. I will do what saves lives, he said. But marriage is more than parchment. We stand on edges of identities, North, free folk, Valyria, Dragonstone. Uniting them must not bury them. If we wed, our first vow is to keep each people's heart beating. Daenerys' lips parted. She placed palm over his on map. I vow that already, but understand old lords will gnash. Let them, Jon said. Tyrion leaned back, flicking quill. Then I draft bands at once. Wyman slapped tabletop, sending quills bouncing. To wolf and dragon, he boomed, raising unseen cup. A leaser chirped above, wings flaring with bronze gleam. On the 14th morning after Eastwatch, banners stirred in biting wind as a column wound south along the King's Road. Unsullied spearhedge glinting sunrise. Vale knights astride shaggy northern chargers. Wildling archers on stolen rounceys. Manderly wyverns alongside Karstark sunbursts recently renewed in loyalty. And at center, 2 riders borne by great beasts. Jon rode Ghostfang, a tall northern gelding gifted by House Mormont. White mane mirrored by direwolf trotting 1 pace ahead. Daenerys matched him on a black mare named Obsidian, cloak of silver fox lining swirling. Drogon and regal sword overhead, scouting. A leaser nested in wicker cage secured to Jon's saddle, though often he darted free to chase ravens, returning to perch on pommel. The road south once bustled with merchants, but winter's war left hamlets burned, fields fallow. When they approached First Village, Coldwater Bend, folk gathered timid, clutching children. Jon dismounted, removed glove, shook hands with aldermen who trembled until Daenerys stepped down, lifting a child whose eyes widened at sight of dragons overhead. She spoke softly about spring planting, seeds carried by Manderly wagons. By the time the host resumed march, villagers lined road cheering. Word preceded them. At Flint's Finger, shepherds knelt with bundles of wool. At the last river ford, fishermen delivered barrels of dried trout for armies. Tyrion observed ledger, love cheaper than levies. Yet not all hearts yielded. Eastmark provided no tribute. Its lord, dust and bloodline returned through cousins, shut gates. Jon refused siege. He left small garrison to hold road, instructing scribes to send message. We return after war to discuss truth. Tormund called it softness, but Jon answered, we won't birth new realm in ashes of pride. Beyond the neck, war's scars deepened. Mass graves dotted moors where Lannister levies slain by the Reach rotted last summer. Road clogged with refugees, small folk fleeing unpaid taxes, others evicted by sellswords. Jon's quartermasters assigned escorts to Hornwood wagons carrying grain, ensuring no child starved along route. Daenerys watched these exchanges with furrowed brow. "Even victory tastes of iron," she murmured. At Moat Cailin, they paused to inspect garrison of Ironborn under Asha no Yara Greyjoy. She greeted with half-smile. "Heard my uncle's blue-lipped corpse fed fishfolk off Cape Wrath," she said. "Wish I'd served sauce." She pledged 50 longships for blockading Blackwater Bay. In days that followed, Tyrion coordinated Raven talk with river lords. Edmure Tully, freed from Lannister dungeon by stealthy brotherhood, now rallied Red Fork banners. He accepted alliance, though lords mistrusted Dragon Queen. Tyrion's parchments dripped silver tongues. "Pay half taxes this year, and we rebuild roads and mills." Promises hung light, but hope heavier. News reached them outside Harrenhal. Iron Bank withdrew loans to Cersei, citing unfavorable security. Without coin, Golden Company withdrew contracts, sailing home. Euron Greyjoy's fleet promised plunder to pay, mutinied, half-sailed west, the rest deserted to Yara. But Cersei still held capital, city walls, wildfire. Scouts reported her forging alliance with Qyburn's alchemists and fanatics of reborn sparrows. She crowned herself Regina Invicta, minted new coin with lion's skull above burning seven-pointed star. Message: fear. Jon's host reached Trident's fords beneath autumn's first thaw. They encamped, awaiting arrival of Reach and Dorne envoys who heard of Night King's fall and now measured prospects. A great pavilion rose striped half-wolf gray, half-dragon black, pitched exactly where Robert's hammer once felled Rhaegar. Some called it omen, others healing. Night before parley, Jon slept poorly. Dreams of ice spears, blue fires returned. He woke before dawn, walked riverbank. Mists coiled low, ghost paced beside. Across water, he glimpsed pale figure. A woman cloaked in feathers, face shadowed, yet hair like starlight. "Lyanna?" She raised hand, pressed finger to lips, then pointed south. Her outline dissolved into reeds. Jon blinked. Nothing remained but fog. At breakfast, Bran approached on cart drawn by Hodder's old sled pony. Absurd sight yet powerful. He whispered, "You saw her." Jon nodded. "She says beware wildfire beneath city. Dragon flame alone will not quell it. Only rain of truth can drown." Jon frowned. What truth left hidden? Bran's pale pupils deepened. Truth of children burnt beneath September. Truth of bastards raised in Flea Bottom. Truth of ghosts haunting Lioness's bed. We must show her subjects the lies behind her crown. Jon rubbed temples. Proof. Walker's left mirrors. Bran's finger tapped his own head. "I can guide you to vaults where Qyburn stores secrets. But only Lion can open Lion's gate." They turned to Tyrion, who stroked beard. "My brother's old tunnels," he recalled. Wildfire stores under Ares were not wholly found. Cersei stockpiled new caches. "If we seize them first," Daenerys interrupted, voice hard.
"No."
"We won't ignite 500,000 souls." Tyrion shook head. "Our aim to remove the powder, not spark it. Expose caches to sunlight, to city's eyes. Let them know their queen plots mass pyre. Fear flips.
Jon met Daenerys Kees.
The truth reigns." She considered, then nodded slowly. "We send small team. Lion to guide, wolf to guard. Spider to whisper," Varys offered, stepping from tent flap. "King's Landing thrives on rumor as rats on grain. A few well-placed tongues will spread exposure before Lannister blades silence them." Plan formed. Tyrion, Davos, Grey Worm, Arya Stark, who arrived that very dawn clad as Storm Crow, would sail upriver in black-hulled skiff, infiltrate King's Landing through forgotten sluice beneath Street of Sisters. Bran's ravens guide path. They mark wildfire caches with luminescent paint gendry devised from dragonglass dust and phosphorus gleaned from dragon dung. Tyrion's archbrow at that. Then city's dawn bells toll by Varys's network, revealing green glow visible through cracks. Jon and Daenerys march host to walls under banner of truce, offer safe pardon to any burgher who opens gates. Cersei isolated, risk grim but lesser than siege. Arya grinned wolfishly eager. Daenerys worried for them, yet recognized necessary venture. Night before departure, she found Jon among torches lining camp's wooden palisade. He held parchment Sansa sent, designs for new wall of glass. She folded fingers over his. Beyond war waits building, and between war and building, he said, dwell ghosts. Ghosts fade when children laugh, she murmured. Let's bring them laughter. He kissed her then, quick, firm, promise rather than passion. Moon-silvered armor plates, torchlight danced across rippling trident. Somewhere above, a leaser wheeled, piping sleepy note, like lullaby of new world unborn. While infiltration party slipped downriver, main host marched south at measured pace. They bypassed ruined stony September, where small folk thronged to touch Daenerys' hand, whispers of queen who saved night. Jon met with Septon elders, promising timber for roofs and maesters to heal plagues still lingering. Skeptics asked how he'd pay. Not with gold, he answered, but with grain and peace. Few complaints. On the second week, they camped outside rotting ruins of Harrenhal. Storm clouds gathered, flecked with pink lightning. Unnatural hue Bran claimed sign of lingering Night King magic dissipating into sky. Ironborn scouts rode ahead, reporting Lannister outriders shadowing but not engaging. At dusk, Arya's raven returned. Caches marked, tunnels collapsed behind. They sail upriver disguised as fishermen now. City restless, bells soon. 2 nights later, thunder rattled tents. Not thunder, bells from far south, carried uncanny clear on storm wind. The host stirred, half asleep, hearing peal of great September across 50 leagues. Tyrion's plan unfolding. Jon assembled officers. Make ready to march before dawn, but steel sheathed, we bear olive branch before claws. Dawn found them on King's Road descending rolling hills toward Blackwater Rush. Blue smoke smudged horizon, signal fires of confusion rather than battle. As they drew near, they witnessed exodus. Strings of carts, mothers bearing bundles, gold cloaks fleeing in disarray. Wild rumors reached pickets. Wildfire barrels discovered in warrens, bright green ooze leaking into street drains. City folk feared Queen meant to set flame, fled to fields. By midday, vanguard reached northern head of Blackwater Bridge. King's Landing walls loomed, high patched, but gates wide with ropes of refugees streaming. Gold cloaks at Mud Gate flung aside cloaks, kneeling as Daenerys atop Drogon landed before them. Jon rode Ghostfang to join. Within day, all outer gates in rebel hands. Cersei remained barricaded in Red Keep with Queensguard loyalists and Qyburn's Scorpion engines. Wildfire caches ringed Keep. From above, green halos visible through cracked tiles. City small folk gathered on steps of ruined September of Baelor, now charred husk since Tyrion's battle years ago, demanding justice. Varys's whispers had done work. She would burn us as night meant to freeze, they cried. Jon convened parley at Dragon Pit. Cersei's envoys emerged. Qyburn with white flag, Ser Robert Strong, a golem of undead mountain towering. They demanded withdrawal, threatened plague of green fire. Daenerys answered by ordering Drogon to exhale small gout. Igniting single-barrel Tyrion had rolled to pit for demonstration. Explosion roared, pillars cracked. She spoke calm. Imagine this beneath your queen's bed. Qyburn wavered. Tyrion stepped forward, holding paper. Banknotes of Iron Bank canceling Crown's credit, sealing doom. Your fires run on empty purse, he said. Your allies gone. Yield castle, release innocents. Negotiations stalemated. But that night, inside Red Keep, Ser Jaime Lannister escaped captivity after Edmure freed him from Riverrun, confronted sister. No witness but ghost of late-night torches. Yet at dawn gate opened, Queensguard swords cast down. Jaime emerged, hand bloody, face ashen. He approached Daenerys, knelt, surrendered castle. Cersei had drunk poison rather than stand trial. King's Landing slipped into new hands almost gently. No sack, no dragonfire beyond single barrel. Jon rode through streets lined with silent crowds, fearful, hopeful. When he dismounted at Great September ruins, wildflowers already pushed through cracks, seeds warmed by dragon's recent flame. He knelt, pressed palm to stone, not to pray, but to feel pulse of city beaten yet breathing. Coronation occurred on first day of true spring, as maesters marked with white ravens from Old Town. In Dragon Pit rebuilt hurriedly with timber stands and draped banners, Daenerys and Jon stood beneath a canopy woven of direwolf and dragon sigils interlaced by rose stems of reach and sun spears of Dorne. Archmaester Marwyn officiated, his booming voice echoing across amphitheater. He proclaimed union of fire and frost to mend realms' rent tapestry. Jon donned circlet of dragonglass set with 3 wolf heads carved from ghost-white weirwood. Daenerys wore twin circlet of Valyrian steel inlaid with silver scales. Together they raised the sword Elysir, forged from Longclaw's Valyrian blade reforged with Drogon's fire and Rhaegal's molten scale, its fuller etched with words in Old Tongue and High Valyrian, that the realm might rise again. The crowd, lords, maesters, small folk, roared. Wildlings hooped, unsullied stamped spearbutts.
Ironborn blew horns.
From tower perches, dragons answered, their cries merging into single thunderous chord that seemed to shake the shattered everythings of yesterday into new shapes. Later, at feast in Red Keep's throne room, throne removed to courtyard until swords melted down for new plowshares, Sansa embraced Jon, eyes moist. "You did it," she said. "We did," he corrected. "And Bran, and Arya." He gestured. Arya danced dagger tricks before Stark guards, winking. He watched Sansa smile, then drift toward Tyrion to debate grain tariffs. Gendry approached Jon, wiping ale from mouth. "King," he began awkward. "Stormlands need lord. Tyrion says maybe me." Jon clapped him. "Stormlands need you," he said. "Forge them anew." Across hall, Daenerys knelt to speak with children from Flea Bottom, telling tales of dragons who guarded shepherds in ancient Valyria. Elysir perched on her shoulder, wings growing each day, scales bright bronze flecked with gold. Jon gazed, warmth blooming. Before dawn, he slipped out to ramparts overlooking Blackwater Bay. Ghost padded behind. Rhaegal slept coiled on tower, Drogon wheeling under moon-hunting whales far offshore. Jon breathed salt night, sensing ghosts at edges. Those lost at Hardhome, at Wall, at Battle of Bastards, on burning seas. They whispered not of vengeance but of keeping watch. Footsteps light as snowfall approached. Daenerys joined, cloak billowing silver. She leaned into him. "Tomorrow we begin tax ledgers," she sighed. "Tomorrow," he agreed. "For tonight, quiet." They stood in silence. Below, city lights shimmered like stars fallen onto dark mirror. Somewhere a bard strummed lute, notes drifting. In them, Jon heard songs of pack, of dragons, of dead night banished. Daenerys whispered, "The world turns, and we turn with it," Jon replied. He looked upward. Aurora still danced faint green along horizon, remnant of magic dissolving. Yet between those veils, new stars flickered, young, small, bright. He felt Daenerys's hand nest into his, warm despite night's chill. A wolf howled on distant hill. A dragon answered low. He closed eyes. For first time since he could remember, tomorrow felt wider than yesterday. A road stretching beyond sight, not into darkness, but into dawn. 5 years later, in an orchard of cherry trees blossoming above Highgarden's terraces, a young boy laughed, chasing a hatchling with wings of shimmering bronze gold. The dragonet darted between trunks, tail flicking petals into air. The boy's white wolf pup bounded after. From a balcony above, Jon Targaryen, no longer called Snow, though he still felt stark winds in veins, watched with quiet joy. Beside him, Queen Daenerys rested hand upon round belly where another child stirred. In distance, fields once burned by war now shimmered green, laced by canals dug by freedmen and staffed by Reach engineers. The new wall of obsidian glass rose on far northern horizon, glinting in sun, Dragons sometimes roost there, sentinel against forgotten evils. Below, people tilled, traded, sang. Some prayed to old gods, some knew, some none. There remained quarrels over coin, land, love. But beneath day-to-day rumble, a deeper peace hummed, born of ice and fire-tempered final. Legends of night broken told in hearthrooms ended with promise. When wolves howl and dragons soar together, dawn prevails. Jon turned to Daenerys. "Do you think they'll remember?" he asked softly. She smiled, laying his palm over her heartbeat. "They'll remember stories we teach," she said, "and our children will teach theirs." She kissed him, taste of cherry bloom lingering. Above, Drogon circled lazily, elder guardian now. Regal dozed near Solar Garden. Elysir, full grow. WN, swooped down to scoop hatchling gently, setting it upon boy's shoulders. The child squealed delight, pup yipped. Petals swirled, catching sun like flakes of melted snow. Jon laughed, a sound still rare enough to prick eyes. He pulled Daenerys close. The world, once fractured, lay open beneath them. Not perfect, not safe, never still, but alive. And so long as the pack and dragons held watch, dawn's promise would rise again and again, over every wall men built, over every shadow night dared cast. A song carried forward on endless wings of light. Below is a continuous block of narrative prose, no chapter breaks, no subtitles, no summaries, composed in the same slow burn, professional novelist style you requested. It exceeds 5,000 words. Please read at your leisure and tell me where you'd like the next pulse of the story to flow. The stillness before dawn had become Jon Targaryen's private hour. 5 years of spring and harvest had taught the realm to wake late and languid, but the king who once walked the wall kept habits winter had carved into his bones. He left the royal apartments in the first ghost-gray interval between starshine and sunrise, quietly, so as not to rouse Daenerys or the small, soft-breathing miracle curled between them in the great wood cradle. Soft-shirt and barefooted, he padded down a corridor of the Tower of the Hand repurposed as royal dwelling until Sun's Spear completed, then down a side stair still smelling faintly of lime wash and fresh plaster. Blackwater Bay glittered in slivers through arrow slits, the water's surface flat under dawn's hush, only a scatter of gulls stooping at shoals to disturb its mirror calm. The war harbors crouched where wildfire barrels had once waited, now their keys stacked with nets and jade-glazed amphorae of arbor wine. The city still dozed. Rare gift for King's Landing, where once a sleepless paranoia had haunted every street. He passed through courtyards scented with rosemary. The bush had taken root within a toppled crenel stone. The gardeners insisted on leaving it. The gash of stone and plant stood as reminder that even wreckage could produce fragrance. He pressed a sprig between thumb and forefinger, let oil perfume the air. At the far end of the garden, the obsidian-rimmed fountain burbled. It had been Tyrion's whim. Melt shards of the old iron thrown into slag, fuse them with Dragonstone glass, hammer the alloy into taloned fish spewing water for street children to drink. Politics turned to plumbing, Tyrion liked to joke. Good governance was little more than directing flow. Jon dipped both hands, cupped the chilled stream and drank. The taste of minerals, faint smoke from volcanic forge, lingered on his tongue, the smallest echo of Drogon's flame. Behind him a voice murmured, "You'll spoil your breakfast, Sansa's." He did not turn at once. He allowed the water's song to fill him another heartbeat. Then he straightened, wiping palms on trousers, and faced his sister where she stood beneath an orange tree weighted with spring fruit. She wore a cloak of dove gray trimmed in sea-green silk, colors of House Stark married to Manderley. Her crown of weirwood leaves and silver threads rested lightly on auburn hair elaborately braided in the northern style, though softening South's heat had coaxed flyaways. She smiled as she approached. Even now, 5 years in, he remained struck by how that smile mirrored their mother's. Yet Sansa's eyes had always belonged to the wolf, keen, reading angles of motive in gestures men thought private. "You never annulled the Stark talent for silent steps," he said. "I annulled nothing that kept me alive," she replied. They touched foreheads, foregone formality of city etiquette. "The roads?" he asked, still thick with pilgrims. All who fled wildfire years ago now returned to see the black glass wall, and to glimpse dragons above Heart's Vale. She hooked her arm through his. We'll need more hostiles if the flow keeps up. Jon guided them along flagstone path newly laid in swirling pattern. Dragon moats embedded in mortar flashed iridescent when struck by dawn's first rays. He said, add it to the ledger for small council. But if numbers grow, you'll want surveyors. She finished with mild amusement. We already secured 200 stonemasons from Bravos. They sail next ebb tide. Jon chuckled. You ever sleep? I do. But not so soundly I forget Frost. Her smile dimmed. Speaking of Frost, Bran's last raven from Castle Black reached during the third watch. He says the weirwoods hum louder than ever, like ice in a spring thaw cracking. Jon stopped. Cracking how? Visions, he thinks. Not of Night King, those threads seem quiet, but of something further north, beyond frozen seas. Shadows like islands that move. Jon's shoulders tightened though wind carried early warmth. I trust Bran, but after 5 years of peacemen, and maybe trees, begin chasing phantoms. Phantoms conjured him, Sansa reminded. Best we keep ears open. He nodded, resumed walking. Beyond perfumed garden, the city's flat roofs stretched, a patchwork of slate and terracotta. Sensors on sept towers released spirals of cedar smoke. Bells of resurrected Mother's Mercy September chimed matins. Yet between holy scents Jon detected faint undernote of tar and furnaces from the shipyards, where Ironborn and Wintermen built a new royal fleet. Industry had saved King's Landing after war as surely as treaties. Smoke of hammers replaced smoke of pyres. They entered narrow cloister flanked by low walls grown with night-blooming larkspur. Sansa's boot toe kicked something. A ball of lacquered wood studded with copper nails. Arya's training props, no doubt. The city's orphanage across from Dragon Pit employed them in games that taught footwork equivalent to Bravosi water dancers. Arya insisted fence and dance differed only in tempo. Sansa nudged the ball aside. Has the Queen decided about the Dornish succession? It should rest with the Martell cousin found near Planky Town, Jon answered. Bloodline enough. But Dorne's council would rather confirm themselves regents forever. He sighed. Daenerys will let them vote. If they choose an endless council, so be it. We keep out of snake burrows. And the Reach. Hightowers lean on faith keeps them slow to accept Dragon Queen. But grain exports double since new irrigation from Aegon's canal. He shrugged. Bellies decide sooner than sermons. Sansa eyed him sideways. Funny, you speak with tone of maester these days. Marwyn says I'd pass for Archmaester if only I'd shave more. Jon laughed. Skin around eyes still creased with years of nights spent over maps. He added lower, or if I forgot how many I killed for this piece. She squeezed his hand. That number bought sunrise. They reached a covered arcade overlooking the Red Keep's forecourt. Below, unsullied drill lines pivoted through spear forms. Their numbers fewer now by design. Grey Worm had reorganized them into training cadre, each unit seated among city watch and regional armies to teach discipline. Even Dornish recruits now practiced in phalanx shapes once foreign to sand. Jon said, I ride north after council. Wintertown requests audience about glass harvest quotas. Sansa pursed lips. Must it be you? The Queen will have our child christened at New Sept within fortnight. He looked away, studied Spearman's synchronized sweep. Ghost trotted down walkway rim far below, for shocking white amid sandstone. I'll return inside 2 weeks. She knows duty triggers. Actually, Daenerys had offered to ride, but bracing Regal still favored wing. And the unborn child demanded rest. Sansa accepted silently, then voice softened. Father would be proud of what you've built. Jon didn't answer. The father he knew most intimately was Ned Stark, but blood father Rhaegar's melodies haunted whenever he oversaw courts. He judged petty lords with care, always wondering what songs Rhaegar might have sung to still hearts without spilling blood. He turned to Sansa. Thank you, he said. They parted as bells for dawn council clanged. Jon climbed interior stairs to council chamber, Once King's small council, now realm's great assembly, where carved bench seats radiated in half-circle around low platform. Daenerys waited already, blonde braid draped over shoulder, silver filigree dragon circlet gleaming. Tyrion whispered something that made her smile. Missandei, now Chancellor of Languages, sorted scrolls. Varys perched owl-like further back, quill poised. Jon took place beside Queen. Bronze Elysir fluttered from perch onto table, settled near inkpots, tail curling. Tyrion reflexively lifted wine cup beyond reach. Daenerys opened with ledger. First report, ships from Volantis sighted off Storm's End. Lord Gendry sends word. They trade saffron, declare peace. No sign of Triarch meddling. No tremor colored her voice, though some at table still blinked when Lord Gendry said, Barrow-born bastard now Storm King by coronation of smallfolk and sealed by dragon decree. Next, Missandei discussed roads. Archmaster's proposed network of raven beacons along King's Road, each post crowned by glass tower lit nightly by captured bioluminescent insects from Sothoryos swamps, courtesy of Archmaester Imbro's borderline mad schemes. Council debated cost. Tyrion loved novelty. Varys doubted viability north of next frost. Jon requested test near Winterfell before full funding. Then came Bran's letter. Jon read aloud. Winds whisper of flows calving in shivering sea. Frozen shapes drift south of Skagos, carrying forests on backs. Eyes beneath ice look upward. All threads anchor there. He added no analysis. Council absorbed quietly. Daenerys intertwined fingers, thoughtful. Jon said, we can dispatch Blackbird scouts from White Harbor. Use glassfire lanterns to burn drift. Tyrion tapped lip. A ship with dragon hatchling might suffice to scout. Elysir flies now near 50 leagues before rest. Too risky, Daenerys said. But Drogon and I could patrol along Eastwatch's coast once Regal returns to full strength. Or I ride Regal, Jon offered. Tyrion raised brow. Daenerys shook head. He's still mending. Jon softened. I trust his wing. She relented with nod, but caution tinted gaze. Varys cleared throat. Spies whisper of cult budding in Old Town. Children of the night flame they call themselves. They burn effigies of wolves and dragons both, claiming winter's false dawn merely preludes longer darkness. They gain followers among fishers who lost kin to last winter's storms. Daenerys sighed. Another doomsday sect. Yet this one armed, Varys emphasized. Stockpiling rusty scythes is nothing, but they smuggle Dornish crossbows. Tyrion smiled thin. Doom cells. Send envoy, Jon decided. Not soldiers. Priest of Seven if they heed faith, or Red Priest if they crave flame. Talk first. Grey Worm, now Warden of Walls, inclined head. If talk fail, there are cells. Council progressed to taxes, harvest, plague in Shield Islands. Yunkai trade route reopened. Ordinary rule, impossibly precious after years of blood. That afternoon, Jon visited armory built on site of old Dragon Pit catacombs. Smiths from Qohor hammered Valyrian blended chain for lords sworn to frontier. Gendry's apprentices shaped plow iron side by side with spearheads, forging peace and readiness together. In corners stood tall glass crucible glowing orange. Dragon glass melted, to be cast into panes for watchtowers north. Jon allowed heat to flush winter from bones.
Gendry merged, Baresjested, sweat streaming.
New ingot of dragon steel cooled last night, he grinned. He unveiled black crimson billet streaked with faint shimmering waves. Rare as hen's teeth. Jon hefted dense, humming faint. Enough for sword? Or circlet for little Aegon? Gendry winked. The king's and queen's firstborn, named for ancients. Jon smiled. Wheels rattled outside. Arya burst in, hair windmust, dressed half Sellsword, half Septa. She tossed dagger high, metal winked. So many duties, she mocked. Any of them fun? She danced between anvils, laser-focused. Despite years of peace, she remained as restless arrow. Jon said, ride north with me. You'll sniff cults. Arya brightened. About time. She glanced at Billet. Make me something thin as secret. Gendry rolled eyes. You think I'm still your armorer on demand, milady? She punched his shoulder affectionate. He blushed. Leaving, Jon stepped into sunlight. Drogon soared overhead, shadow blotting courtyard. And for first time since war's end, dread pinched inside. Not fear of enemies, but fear of cracks in calm. Everything he loved now towered. Dragons, realm, children. High towers topple hardest. He looked up, sky clear, yet North's memory whispers still in blood. Whatever shapes Bran saw on drifting ice would test them anew. Jon's steeled heart. Pack remains. The royal progress north departed within a fortnight. Jon, Arya, a cadre of Queensguard, 30 unsullied, and a dozen engineers to inspect Glass Wall. Grey Worm rode as far as Maidenpool, then peeled east to inspect Tidewall at Duskendale. Daenerys kissed Jon farewell at the river pier, Drogon lowering head so they brushed snouts. Dragon's sign of bond. Elysir spiraled above, then chased Gull. Sansa stayed to counsel Queen. Tyrion accompanied to audit Wintertown's brewery experiment. Claiming study of barley taxation, truth more about ale. Varys vanished citing whispers. Missandei remained translator for Dornish envoy. Thus parted webs. They rode through Riverlands reborn. Willows foliaged, mills creaking. At Riverrun, Edmure greeted them with nets bulging salmon. He still apologized to every Stark for waffling loyalties under Frey's shadow. Jon ate fish smiling. Crossing neck, they shared camp with crannogmen hunting night terrors. Gigantic pale eels mutated in last winter. Arya speared one in moonlight. Crannog men sang. At Moat Caelan glass towers rose, obsidian bricks reflecting stars. Ghostly green glow of lantern beetles glimmered behind panes. Proof of Maester experiment. Engineers took notes. North welcomed them in riot of summer wildflowers. Jon's heart soared at first glimpse of Winterfell's ancient towers, rebuilt stronger, their walls faced with shimmering dragonsteel mosaics spelled by runesmiths. Banners of direwolf and dragon flew united. Below, market bustled with furs, lemon cakes, exotic spices. Little Aegon toddled out to greet father 5 days later, eyes violet gray. Daenerys had flown north on Drogon with Sansa, surprising him. Reunion spilled tears. That night, feast under Godswood lanterns. Bran wheeled out, skin paler, eyes deeper. He beckoned Jon privately beneath red leaves. Threads tighten, he said. He pointed North Star. Something stirs beyond wall of night. Jon asked if dead again. Worse, Bran whispered. Living that drink cold. Vague as usual. Elysir circled overhead, restless. Jon promised vigilance. Within week, he and Bran led survey of Glass Wall. It rose rough but formidable, 15 spans thick, 40 high. Obsidian fused with stone and steel, all edges enchanted by blood of dragon and bones of weirwood. Runes glowed faint red at sunset. Jon walked parapet with Arya, wind-tugging cloaks. Below, far side, sea ice drifted. Engineers tapped, measured for cracks. None yet. Bran parked chair at central bastion, placed palm on rune. Eyes whitened. Winds howled though calm moments earlier. He spoke in voice overlaid with others. They gather. Jon's hand reached for hilt. Who? Bran's pupils returned. Children of frost but not dead. Hunters of whales, born in deepest dark. They sense dragon heat. They will test glass. Jon exhaled. We strengthen posts. We recruit watch. And teach dragons vigilance. Arya added, tossing dagger, catching fluent. Little one already hungry to hunt. Jon stroked Elysir perched on gauntlet. Dragonet purred. Then we begin again. Next month's filled with fortification, treaties, births. Daenerys delivered daughter as autumn leaves fell. She bore copper curls from Stark line, eyes bright silver. They named her Lyanna Riella, to quiet ghosts. The city rang bells not of warning but celebration. Wildlings lit sky lanterns. Karth traders gifted silks. Under Bran's direction, ravens mapped shifting sea ice. Maester fishes anchored beacon towers floating. each tipped with dragonfire braziers. Ironborn patrolled outer currents in armored sloops. Jon flew regal along circuit thrice monthly, scanning. One winter night he spotted movement, shapes on flow-dragging sled of whalebone. He descended cautiously. They fled into mist quick as cats. He found carving on stranded ice block. Spiral etched like those seen at dead rituals, but less precise, more alive. He shivered. Back at Winterfell he met Daenerys by hearth. She listened, then said, "Not all the dark is dead, some only cold. Maybe they fear us no less." She suggested sending parley whales with gifts of polished obsidian. Jon laughed, though admiring. Peace required creativity. 5 more years turned. Children grew. Dragons soared. Council of Lords became Assembly of Realms, each region electing speakers. Tyrion codified charter granting smallfolk voice. Faith militant dissolved into peace wardens. Oldtown's doomsday sect matured into pacifist order of astronomers after Maester Ambrose invited their leader to view stars through newly forged lens. Yet far north the mysterious tribes of Frost emerged. First contact came when Ironborn longship returned with ivory horn carved into likeness of giant narwhal, left upon deck overnight. No crew harmed. Varys concluded message. "We see you." Jon consulted Bran. The Greenseer glimpsed glimpses. Tall pale hunters wearing furs of seal, faces scarred with jade pigment, traveling in silence. Not whites. Living pulse beneath skin. Jon proposed envoy, small, unarmed, bearing gifts of glass fish. Daenerys insisted send dragons overhead but keep distance. Arya volunteered, of course. So did Samwell Tarly, now Archmaester of Peoples, writing treatise on first contact. Gendry forged intricate astrolabe as present. Sansa sewed cloaks lined with warm fleece. The voyage north across shivering sea began under Aurora. Jon stayed. Someone must govern realm. But his heart sailed too. He trusted Arya's quickness, Sam's kindness, Dragon's watch. Weeks passed. Ravens reported icebergs bigger than castles, seas flashing blue fire at night, bioluminescent plankton disturbed by hull. Then one dusk a raven arrived bearing scrap of sealskin, Sam's script. Met them. They call themselves Kol. Language clicks like cracking ice. They gave us water from flower beneath glacier. Believe dragons are sky whales. More soon. Daenerys laughed aloud reading. Sky whales indeed. She looked to Jon. New songs to learn, she said. Jon hugged her, smelling hearth smoke woven with summer rose. Yes, he answered, and new dawns to chase. Years rolled, and realm's tapestry thickened. Starlight lantern towers marked roads from Old Town to White Harbor. Pilgrims spoke dozens of tongues in markets. Dragons carried mail pouches across kingdoms in single morning. A bronze statue of Ned Stark and Rhaegar Targaryen shaking hands stood at Trident Ford, though old soldiers muttered at its unlikely peace. War visited again. Small, sharp, contained. Iron Islands rebelled under second son of Euron, craving chaos. Rhaegal and Drogon doused rebellion at sea. Jon cried after but understood necessary. Justice tempered by mercy remained longest war. On 20th anniversary of Night King's fall, realm gathered at Obsidian Wall. Snow fluttered like dandelion fluff. Though summer still clung south, some said magic still seeped there. Jon, Daenerys, their 2 children. Aegon grown gangly, Lyanna mischievous, and Elysir now full-bodied bronze dragon perched on ridge, presided over feast with Kol delegation. Fish stew bubbled in obsidian cauldrons. Songs in half-click language mingled with North reels. Bran watched from weirwood-trimmed seat, eyes more tree than man now, smiling. When moon reached zenith, Jon rose, raised cup of warm sweet wine. He looked at faces. Sansa silver-haired but bright, Arya with laugh lines, Gendry broad as ever, Samwell scribbling still, Grey Worm tranquil, Tyrion at ease. He spoke simple. Night taught us fear. Dawn taught us hope. Between them we found each other. We will forget again, human hearts do. When that day comes, let stones and songs remind. Let this wall stand not as barricade but as mirror. To see what froze us once, and what thought us forever. Silence held breath. Then child laughter burst. Dragons answered with sonorous exhale. Cull hunters slapped spears on ice. Wildlings howled. Lords cheered. Echo rolled into endless dark, meeting horizon where stars spilled. Daenerys slipped cold hand into his. He felt heartbeat under her skin. Steady, undimmed by years or burdens. She murmured, "Still afraid." He thought of first night stepping onto wall, of dagger cold through heart, of blue eyes, of wildfire rumbling, of child's first cry, of cherry blossoms, of frost hunters, of tomorrow's arguments about barley. Fear threaded all, yet love wove stronger. He answered quietly, "Always, but fear no longer rules. The pack and the dragons do." She kissed his cheek, tasting snowflake. Above them, a Leaser launched, bronze wings spanning silence. He soared high, where northern lights shimmered into veils of green and violet. In that vault, wolf and dragon banners intertwined upon invisible wind, fluttering toward future that would ever demand vigilance and tenderness both. The song of ice and fire lived on, not in swords or crowns, but in hearts beating against cold, in flames lighting night, in children chasing hatchlings through orchards, in rivers that no longer remembered blood. And so it would for as long as dawn and dusk danced across wall of the world. Each day written anew by those daring enough to believe stories could choose gentler endings. The wind that peeled down off the wall carried a scent that Jon had never quite learned to name. A mingled perfume of powdered ice and something older, mineral and secret, as though the bones of the world were shedding their last thin skin of winter. He knew that smell from every dawn patrol he had ever ridden when he'd worn the black and, later, from the nights he'd stood sentry on the obsidian ramparts built after the war. Yet standing here now, in the hush between the second and third bells of the morning watch, with Aleacer's bronze wings rustling restlessly above the parapet and the feel of Regal's silent heartbeat swimming like heat inside his own chest, he understood it differently. It was the smell of the hinge of time. He had flown north at dusk, leaving Winterfell's fires winking like a scattered crown behind him, riding the pale green shimmer of aurora until the world beneath fell away to the glassy black of the shivering sea. Below, flows drifted like the scales of a vast broken serpent. Sometimes he glimpsed white bears nosing open water, sometimes only emptiness as raw and echoing as a harp string plucked in a cathedral. Bran's sketches had led him to this place. A crescent of jagged rock thrusting from the ice nearly 300 leagues east of Eastwatch, far beyond the Nine Shadows where even then hunters seldom ranged. The Cull called it Mershaka, the mouth of the dark. Jon stood now on Regal's shoulders. The dragon crouched low on the tallest of the crescent peaks, talons sunk deep into obsidian seams that glittered in the aurora glow. The wind riffled his wolf fur cloak and set the icicle pendants of his gorget chiming faintly. Aleacer landed beside him, head cocked, narrow golden eyes fixed on the sea. The little bronze drake had grown in the years since his birth but still looked small against Regal's ridged vastness, a spark clinging to an emerald thunderhead. Jon laid a gauntlet hand on Aleacer's neck, felt the impatient tremor in the sinew beneath scales, and whispered a wordless hush. Behind, on the plateau where Regal had touched down, Arya and Sam moved through half-light. Arya's cloak snapped about her lean frame, her hair sewn back into a tight warrior's braid so that only a few raven strands escaped, whipping across her cheekbones. She carried a spear of blued steel and dragonglass, a weapon forged by Gendry in the new furnaces of King's Landing, its but etched with the direwolf sigil of House Stark and the spiral sign of the Cull. Sam, layered in furs so thick he looked more polar bear than Maester, hunched over a leather-bound folio, Cull scratching despite the cold's attempts to snap the ink to ice. Every few paces he paused to peer through a chunky lens ground from a single shard of pale quartz, part of Maester Imbro's consignment of sky eyes. Jon left the dragons and crossed to them, boots crunching rime. He touched Arya's shoulder lightly. "How far to the cairn?" "Half a mile," she said, her breath fogged between bared teeth, and even beneath the ghost of a smile her eyes were all calculation, as if she could already see threats that ordinary daylight would never reveal. "Sam's star chart says the glacier tongue we saw from the sky ends just past the next ridge." Sam blinked, flustered but determined. If the Cole translation's right, the cairn of the listening bones sits at the very tip, where the old whales beach in summer. And if Bran's dream is right, that's where we'll find the singer. Jon glanced at the horizon. The aurora's curtain pulsed slow, bathing broken flows and jutting spires in green, then violet, then deepest indigo. Columns of frost steam rose wherever hidden vents exhaled. Ice moaned beneath the wind, deep, tidal, half-sentient. He thought of the Night King's cold dead choir, of the scream that had ruptured half the wall. Bran said this singer was different, living, but Jon had learned to distrust such fine distinctions. Cautiously alive could still bleed a realm. "We go on foot," he said. "Regal circles. Alisar stays with me." Arya nodded. "No banners. No trumpets." Sam closed his folio with a puff of frost. "Only a maester's nerves," he muttered, and tucked the book into his pack. They descended the scarp by a natural stair of icy ledges. Darkness pooled in the gullies. Their breath echoed between wind-sculpted blades of basalt that rose like petrified sails. Jon set a slow pace, scanning for motion. Alisar glided low overhead, feathering wings to ride updrafts with minimal sound. From time to time, Regal's silhouette passed across the aurora, colossal and silent, the green and gold of his hide ghosting through curtains of color. Snow began to fall, fine needles that stung exposed skin. Jon drew his wolf fur up, felt the coarse hide rasp the scar that still crossed his throat from the Night King's grip years before. Beneath his wrappings, the skin there was mottled white, numb to pain, an ever-present reminder of the grip of winter. The first sign of the singer's haunt came as a vibration in the air, more felt than heard. A thread of toneless hum winding in and out of the wind's howl like a heartbeat within storm. Arya froze beside a cairn of whale ribs blackened by age. Her hand went to the spear haft. Sam's breath hitched. He raised the quartz lens as though it were a shield. The hum grew louder, still no more pitched than silence itself. It thrummed in Jon's teeth, pulsed behind his eyes. He knew this resonance, not the shriek of wights nor the sibilant whisper of White Walkers, but the low drawl that had sometimes seeped from Craster's keep during long watches, a lullaby of the ice. Yet warmer, if warm could exist in such cold, an undercurrent of beckoning. They rounded the ridge and saw the glacier tongue spill into the bay, a frozen river arrested in mid-cascade. At its terminus lay a vast amphitheater of ice, rimmed by crescent ridges exactly like the rocky crown behind them. And there, in the glacier's heart, stood the singer. It or she rose taller than any man, but slender, almost willowy, draped head to heel in strands of what looked like spun moonlight. No face showed within that veil, only a soft azure glow beating like ember through frost. Her arms spread above a pool of ice so clear Jon could see black water moving beneath. Around the pool stood pillars of packed snow carved into helical spirals, each embedded with shards of opalescent crystal that pulsed in sympathetic rhythm with the singer's glow. Sam whispered, "Mother above!" Arya crouched, blade ready, but Jon lifted a hand. Alisar settled to the ice at his feet, talons skating, wings half spread. The dragonet's throat rippled with an incipient growl, but Jon soothed him with a touch behind the crest spikes. He stepped forward, boots creaking on the crust. The hum deepened, now clearly melodic, a chord suspended on the cusp of comprehension. The singer's veil fluttered though no breeze reached the amphitheater. Jon raised both his palms, empty. "We come in peace," he said, voice carrying strange in the frozen acoustics. The veil parted, just enough for a face of crystalline ice to emerge, eyes radiating pale flame. Her mouth shaped a sound that dripped with overtones, clicks and vowels like cracking ponds. Yet beneath it Jon felt the shape of a word. Name. He touched his chest. "Jon," he said, then gestured to companions. "Arya."
Sam.
"And Alisar." He lifted hand to the dragonet, who stretched long neck and crooned unsurely. The singer cocked her head. Shards in surrounding pillars brightened. She touched slender fingers to the ice. Between them, light erupted, and within that glow formed a tableau. dragons wheeling over a sea of mist, a great snake of frost rising to meet them, and between dragonfire and serpentine ice, a bridge of obsidian glass. The image pulsed, then fractured into static.
Sam gasped.
She sees the wall, our wall, he breathed. He fumbled folio open, flipping sketches Bran had inked. This matches his last drawing. A bridge of glass leading to unknown lands. Jon held the singer's gaze. You want a bridge, he said slowly, to cross south, or for us to come north? The singer stepped forward. Vale drifted away from her face, revealing porcelain skin laced with sylph-like filaments. Her eyes were not blue like the dead. They were the pale turquoise of glacial meltwater in sunlight. She raised her hands, palms out. Between them, ice formed, sculpting swift into a perfect miniature of regal, wings unfurled. Then the dragon dissolved, and in its place rose an effigy of the Night King, arms wide, shards in the pillars flickering cold blue. The effigy's chest cracked, emitting a screaming note that slashed the hum in two. Elysir squealed, wings thrashing. Arya braced spear. Jon steadied them. The singer flattened palms. The image of the Night King shattered into dust, scattering like blown snow. Where it had stood, the ice shimmered and produced a final shape. A human hand reaching for another, but between them shone a dark void. Sam stepped beside Jon. She's telling us the world was broken by him, that something still separates her folk and ours. Arya muttered, maybe the next war, born of misunderstanding. The singer closed palms. The courtyard darkened except for her internal glow and the slow pulse of crystals. Jon understood a decision hung upon his next gesture. He drew breath, ignoring sting of cold in lungs. He knelt. The ice bit his knees through leather, but he bowed head. In that posture he heard the hum alter, subtle, sliding up half a tone, becoming almost lullaby. The singer moved nearer until Vale brushed hair at his brow. She extended a single finger of translucent frost and touched the scar at his throat. Pain flared, a frostbite burn of lightning. His sight clouded with quick visions. The wall exploding, Arya's needle finding heart of a giant white, Regal's wing sheared, Daenerys weeping fire. Then newer visions. Children chasing Elysir, dwarfs forging bridges of glass, sails with wolf and dragon cresting azure seas. The singer withdrew. Jon stood, heart racing. She pointed at Sam's lens. Sam handed it, trembling. She set it on a pillar. Shards flowed, engulfed lens, then parted. In its place lay a disk of ice etched with thousands of minuscule runes. Sam's eyes sharpened. Glyph instructions, he said. Maybe a blueprint. The singer stepped back, incline of her head reminiscent of regal nod. Then she began to fade, Vale dissolving into motes of snow, her body glazing transparent until only inner glow remained. Then that too winked out. Pillars dimmed. The hum dwindled until ice amphitheater lay in ordinary silence. Arya exhaled shaky breath. 7 hells. Jon took disc gently. We take this to Bran. They retraced path, up ridge, across ledges, the disc cold enough to numb gloves. Regal crouched waiting. Elysir perched on his sire's horn. Jon mounted with Arya. Sam secured disc in oiled cloth. Dragons sprang skyward. Beneath, amphitheater shimmered once, pillars collapsing inward as though never existed. Sea swallowed shards, wind scoured prints. Winterfell's great hall brimmed with heat when they returned. Sansa, Daenerys, Gendry, Tyrion, and Bran assembled as Jon placed disc on long table. Bran touched it. Runes flared, casting lattice of pale light onto rafters. An architecture unfolded, vast spiderweb overlaying maps of north and far beyond sea. Points of convergence glowed where runes nodded. The wall, Dragonstone's forge, the very amphitheater they'd left, and islands beyond mapping, circles drawn upon blank. Song lines, Bran breathed. Paths of resonance. Daenerys frowned. Resonance. Everything sings, Bran said. Stone, flame, blood. The Night King twisted those songs to frost. The singer seeks to untwist deeper notes, Rethread lines across void. A bridge. Yes, but of sound first, then glass. Tyrion sipped mulled wine. And what melody does she want us to play? A symphony, Sam said, flipping manuscript pages. This is harmonic math. If we cast pillars along those nexus points, we create resonance net to heal fractures. Gendry whistled. Pillars of obsidian with dragonsteel cores. I can forge, but we'd need half a mountain. Daenerys turned to Jon. Then we mine the full mountain. Dragonstone still whispers. Drogon will lend flame. Jon laid hand over hers. If we build this net, we bind our realm to theirs. Peace or no turning back. Sansa nodded. We've walked into dawn. Let's not stumble at sunrise. Years bled to decades. Pillars rose, black singing monoliths planted from Dragonstone to Mershaka, from Cartha's Jade Gate to shores of Sithorios.
Dragões ferried molten cores, cool guided placimente, viewed links carved runes.
Students from Citadel studied resonance, while children from Wintertown learned clicks of ice tongue. Jon grew silver at temples. Daenerys's braids streaked pale gold. Their children matured. Prince Aegon flew Elysir across Summer Sea, forging treaties with Noth and Lung. Princess Lyanna rode young snow-scaled dragon Ygritte to jungles, bringing back seeds that flourished in reach. On centennial of Night King's fall, last pillar planted on floating berg rim at world's curve. Dawn after, humming filled air across continents, low, tender, inevitable. Farmers looked up from plow. Sailors stilled oars. Sept bells told in time to note. Temples of basilisk isles fell silent. Dragons spiraled sky, wings strobing. From wall to shivering sea, ice melted. Not to flood, but to sculpt translucent arches bridging flows, rich with life. Southern deserts felt breath of cool breeze for first time in memory. Plague spores withered in resonance field. Fish spawned along once barren shores. Jon and Daenerys stood again where first singer vanished. In amphitheater reborn, thousands gathered. Cull, wildlings, maesters, children wearing patches of every house. The original singer emerged, her veil shimmering in dawn. She bowed, not low like subject but like equal greeting. Jon bowed back. No treaty signed.
No crown traded.
Just the hum, two melodies weaving. Ice and fire, neither mastering, both sustaining. And so the hinge of time turned again. Stories of war slid into legend, legends into myth, myth into whisper beneath lullaby mothers sang. Dragons nested peacefully on cliffs above green wines of arbor. Wolves roamed golden fields chasing shadowed deer. Wall became museum. Swords chorused into plowshares. Songs lingered long after singers slept. Yet each dawn, before children stirred, Jon still woke to scent of powdered ice and ancient mineral secret. He would walk gardens where rosemary tangled broken stones, breathe and remember cold's lesson. Sometimes the singer's hum answered faint from horizon, a promise that vigilance need not wear steel so long as hearts remained tuned. And when at last his own hum weakened, when Daenerys's fingers trembled in his and their breaths slowed to dusk, they watched skies flicker with aurora one final time from Red Keep's terrace. Dragons circled overhead, no longer guardians, now simply partners in dawn. Jon whispered, "The pack survives." Daenerys answered, "And dragons soar." They closed eyes. Some say two bright streaks crossed heavens that night, one silver, one gold, merging into star that has burned ever since above northern pole. Cull hunters call it Hearthstar. Maesters chart it as Targaryen Stark Comet. Children of every house no simpler name. Dawnfire. Under its glow, world sings still. Sings bridges, orchards, whales, winds, all held in resonance forged when ice knelt to fire and fire bowed to frost. No one remembers subtitles to that song. They don't need to. The melody alone is enough to guide feet through darkness into day, again and again, as long as dawn keeps returning across a realm once broken, now whole, and forever turning toward the light. A tide of silver mist lay draped across the fields outside Winterfell, as though the heavens had lowered their own breathing upon the north and left a film of cloud on every stalk of barley and every ridge of the newly plowed earth. At the hour when dawn itself had yet to decide which of its colors would open first, King Jon Targaryen stood alone on the battlement above the eastern gate, feeling the cold seep through the wolf fur of his cloak and prickle the scar that crossed his throat like a stiff seam. He lifted his face to the hush and sniffed. The air smelled of peat fire and distant rain and something faintly metallic that he had come, across half a lifetime, to associate with the dragon's presence high above unseen by mortal eyes. If he listened closely enough, he imagined he could hear wing beats folding into the sky. But none of the great shadows showed this morning. Regal was ranging with Elysir far beyond the shivering sea, and Drogon, aged and slow, preferred the thermals above the arbor of late. Winterfell's roof, freshly reshingled with dark slate that shone like damp raven feathers, felt diminished without them. Beneath, in the yard, the new recruits of the Obsidian Watch were already forming ranks. Their commander, a lordling from House Wells who had not yet grown into the authority his father's grave cough had shoved onto him, barked orders too quickly and tripped over the then vowels that peppered the companies. Wildling archers, garrulous even at this hoe.
Hooted corrections.
The lordling flushed crimson. Jon made a mental note. A morning spar beside the boy might help. Age had taught him that humiliation in barracks bred resentment, not discipline, and the watch must never fracture along the seams the Night King had once tried to split wide. Footsteps scraped behind him. Arya Stark mounted the stair, leather jerkin half unlaced, hair hacked short again after years letting it grow past her shoulders. She carried 2 practice blades under one arm, their wooden edges dinged from countless sessions. Without greeting, she leaned on the Merlin and watched the recruits below. "He swings like a boy trying to please his septa," she said after a moment. "He is a boy trying to please the realm," Jon replied. "Give him a year." She slid those pale eyes to his face. "You didn't leave the ramparts last night."
No.
"Dreams? Questions?" He said nothing more. Arya, wise enough not to prod, handed him one of the battered swords. They crossed to the training yard and asked the lordling for space. The young commander blushed a fresh shade of beet and scuttled his recruits to one side. Jon shrugged out of his cloak, flexed the stiffness from shoulders, and saluted with the practice blade. Arya rolled her wrists, one heel scuffing dirt, a ghost of bravos in her stance. They fell upon each other in silence save for the wooden clack of parrying. Jon moved heavier these days, but he compensated with patience, intercepting her feints rather than chasing. Arya used speed and cunning, the leaden gloom of dawn making her phantom steps seem even swifter. A dozen passes, perhaps 2 dozen. Sweat needled down their temples. At last he trapped her blade against his hip and touched her collarbone with the pommel. She grinned, breath only slightly uneven. "You're still too polite," she said. "Another year and I may catch you for good." "When I am polite enough to let you," he answered. They laughed. The yard relaxed with them. An hour later Jon walked the corridor that bent around Winterfell's new solar, where the old library had once sagged under damp. Fresh cedar lined the walls now, and colored panes caught thin sun to scatter rivulets of red and green across woven carpets. Daenerys sat at the low table inside, daughter Lyanna cross-legged beside her, reading. Lyanna's curls, copper-brown like Sansa's had once been, tumbled forward as she squinted at the parchment. Jon paused in the doorway, savoring the hush. Daenerys sensed him first. She looked up, the slightest smile creasing lines at her mouth's corners. Years had etched her beauty into something rarer. A face carved by duty and tempered by wonder, the silver hair streaked with near white where fire had once singed strands. He saw the dawnlight shimmer along those strands and felt his chest pinch with affection and a grief that never fully left. They had buried more friends than most kings would in 3 lifetimes. "How many runes did you master?" Jon asked, stepping into the sunlight. Lyanna beamed. 31. The singer's spiral drawn for 5 of them.
No, Lyanna have.
"It's a letter. Means silent meeting. If you mispronounce, you promise war." "Let's hope none of us mispronounce," Jon murmured. He ruffled her curls and kissed Daenerys's brow. "The ravens." "Still no word from Regal's flight," she said. He is beyond the range of the beacon towers. Jon's shoulder muscles tensed. 12 days, Bran had estimated. This morning marked 13. Rhaegal's last message had spoken of a curling darkness glimpsed below the flows, a serpent of black glass big enough to swallow whales. Alecer had spitted a seal for proof. They'd sent feathers soaked with pitch to communicate scale, each bigger than Jon's torso. Daenerys read his expression. "You trust him," she reminded quietly. "And trust Alecer." But he saw a shadow of worry behind her silver eyelashes. Since Drogon had slowed, Rhaegal had taken up burden of mail flights, and Aegon, now 23, rode often as messenger. To lose sun and dragon in one icy maw would reroute every chord of the realm's fragile harmony. Jon sank onto the cushioned bench opposite. He poured himself watered wine. The grapes had come from Dorne, newest cultivar coaxed to fruit by irrigation and Dornish engineers who once despised dragons. Now they toasted the monarchy every harvest. How brittle alliances seemed once, how natural now. He sipped. A trumpet sounded from the outer wall, a signal not of attack but return. He rose so fast the cup spilled. Lyanna squealed, clapping. Daenerys stood, but her hand shot to the small of her back. Old wound from Myrish arrow sometimes seized there. Jon steadied her elbow and together they walked onto the balcony. The sky over the gods would churned with wings. Rhaegal dove first, green hide slashed with lines of storm gray, scars from earlier battles long faded but still ghosting pattern like lightning. Alecer followed, bronze and bright, trailing a cry that rattled ravens from branches. And behind them, something new. A third silhouette gliding on long, unhurried wings, as pale as clouded glass, its membranes veined with faint teal light. It was not as big as the other two, but bigger than yearling dragons of court. It seemed carved of ice and smoke. Gasps rippled through courtyard. Jon felt Daenerys' grip tighten. Lyanna pressed herself against balcony rail, wide eyes shimmering. Rhaegal landed on the outer bailey with rumble of displaced air. Aegon slid from harness, cloaked in white seal furs gifted by the coal. His cheeks bit red with cold, frost-crusted lashes. He steadied as Alecer swooped to perch on Rhaegal's shoulder, chirruping triumph. The pale dragon circled once, then settled on the far side of yard. Its talons touched cobble softly, as though it weighed far less than volume suggested. Steam hissed where claws met stone. Its eyes, icy opal-flecked green, surveyed assembled men with alien calm. Jon and Daenerys descended, Lyanna skipping behind. Aegon strode to meet them, pulling gloves free. "Father, mother, I present Gyrax." He pronounced the name in a new clicking dialect. The crystal shade. Daenerys pressed a hand to her heart. "A hatchling? But not of our line." "No," Aegon said. He turned, voice trembling between awe and fatigue. "She was waiting beneath the flow where the singer guided us. They call her the Moon-Forged, born from an egg laying in an ice cavern at first dawn. She is gift, they say, symbol we keep packed." He inhaled, then fell to one knee, exhaustion overtaking. "It wasn't easy convincing her I wasn't lunch." Jon helped his son up, arm tight across shoulders. "You did well." He studied the pale dragon. Gyrax's neck spines shimmered like hoarfrost. She smelled of cold salt and something luminous, like starlight made mineral. "She will need a rider." Aegon half smiled. "She hasn't chosen yet." Lyanna darted forward before any could stop her. She bowed, hip cocky as though greeting a playmate, and held out a flake of dried cod always in her pocket to feed the raptor hawks. Gyrax lowered her head, nostrils flaring. A hush knotted the yard. The dragon's tongue, thin and split at end like a ribbon of crystal, flicked the fish morsel. Lyanna laughed, delighted. Gyrax exhaled a small bloom of frost that swirled around the child but did not sting. Snowflakes formed in that breath, each hexagon tinted faint rose. The dragon purred, a chime like bells submerged in water. Daenerys caught Jon's eye. They both saw it, destiny repeating but sideways. A rider choose. That night Winterfell shone brighter than any day since the battle where the flayed man fell. Torches lit every parapet. Lanterns hung from weirwood trunks. Paper globes painted with spirals of turquoise and bronze danced on strings across the great hall. The feast spilled into courtyards. Coal guests, their bodies painted with jade lines, taught fisher girls the click song while wildlings pounded drums of walrus hide. Dornish vintners tapped casks of sour red. Reach minstrels plucked citterns. Twins from Gulltown set off bursts of sparking star ash that hissed into sky and refracted off dragon wings as they passed overhead. Even Drogon, ancient and rheumy-eyed, exhaled a lazy flare that traced charred sigils above the roofs. Jon leaned against the edge of the dancing circle, content to watch Lyanna swirl with Aegon, both laughing, siblings moving with unpracticed grace. Gyrax glided a wide orbit overhead like a pale moon. At his elbow Tyrion gnawed on a haunch of peppered hair. The hand had grown heavier, silver webbing his beard, but his wit remained dagger-sharp. "You notice?" Tyrion said, voice raised over drums. "The moment peace feels comfortable, the world tosses another dragon at us. Almost like fate worries we might become complacent." Jon answered, "Complacency is a mask for something worse, forgetting." He sipped mead that tasted of juniper. "I'll take another dragon over another martyr." Tyrion chuckled, wiped grease. "Oh, we'll get our share of both before story closes. But I'm glad you intend to stretch chapters." A shiver of bells interrupted the northern beacons. Jon's head lifted. The protocol, 3 bells quick meant message, not alarm. He stepped from circle, weaving past dancers toward the rookery tower. Daenerys intercepted, hand on his arm. "Go," she said. "I'll follow." In the rookery, the lantern swung above scrapes of claws and flutter of wings. The maester on watch, thin lad from Old Town still unused to Winterfell's midnight diet of wind, held a scroll bearing the blue seal of the watch. Sweat beaded his brow despite the chill. Jon slit seal and scanned. Ghostfire sighted. Bran's spidery script. 4th pillar hummed unbound. Glass crack spreading. "I ride to last light with 13. Seek moon forged." Jon's stomach clenched. Last light was the lighthouse built on the western curve where glass wall dipped to sea. Its pillar youngest still cooling. Ghostfire was Bran's code for unknown resonance surge. More dangerous than silent fractures but less than outright collapse. Still enough to unnerve the wall. Daenerys arrived, reading his eyes. "What?" He passed scroll. She drew breath. "Then we fly tonight." Tyrion, roused from hall, protested logistics. Arya strapped knives. Lyanna insisted she come. Jon knelt, took her shoulders. "Your time soon. Candle here still learning wind." She wrinkled nose but nodded. Aegon prepared a leaser. They would scout flank. Within hour, moon dipped behind ragged clouds. Jon straddled regal, felt dragon's chest expand, heat stirring in belly. Daenerys, slender against Drogon's gargantuan neck, signaled. Snow eddied from ramparts as wings beat, lifting dragons into starlight. Elysir and Gyrax followed. Winterfell shrank, torches dwindling to coals, and the northern wild rolled beneath them. Rivers glittering like veins of mercury, forests black as sleeping beasts. They banked west along Obsidian Line. Out there, beyond even torches of Hardhome Memorial, the new pillars rose at intervals, each topped by lantern of living beetles. Tonight the 4th flame flickered blue-white, brighter than moon, then winked to darkness, then flashed again irregular. Jon pressed knees. Regal quickened. As they descended, he saw fracture. Pillars' skin spidered glass cracks that wept pale fire, wisps of heatless flame swirling and congealing into shapes. Faces? For a moment Jon glimpsed eyes inside that flame, eyes he had not seen since a battlefield of falling snow. But there was no Night King. This fire wore sorrow, not hunger. Bran waited on the parapet, wrapped in weirwood-stitched robes, hands pressed to runes. Grey Worm knelt at his side, 13 unsullied in ring, spears planted but down, heads bowed chanting soft translation of Singer's hymn. As dragons landed, the flame surged once more, then shivered and died into silence. The cracks glowed faint orange but did not widen. Bran opened eyes. Harmonic echo, he said, voice frayed. The net resonated with something vast beyond pillar. Gyrex contains key. Her song counterbalances. Daenerys slid from Drogon, helping Bran rise. A test, she murmured. Or a greeting. Jon approached pillar, laid bare palm to glass. He expected cold, felt warmth, like distant hearth. In cracks, little motes zipped as though insects of light repairing edges. Gyrex padded close, set forehead to pillar. The glass thrummed. Cracks flowed shut, sealing as if melted by invisible flame. When fissures vanished, lantern beetles resumed lazy pulse of green. Arya breathed. That was almost too simple. Simple because trust already forged, Bran said. But pattern shows net still incomplete. He turned his head, staring into distance where sea merged night. There is a void singing back, makes our pillars tremble. We must meet that song, not answer, harmonize. He leaned heavily. Gray worms steadied him. The aging green seer whispered, "My eyes near dusk, others must walk weirwood paths." He drew from sleeve a slender scroll sealed with wax shaped like weirwood leaf. Gave to Jon. For Lyanna. Time soon. It took a fortnight to return, storms riding them sideways across mountain spines. When they landed beyond Winterfell's gates, the holdfast thrummed with anxious anticipation. Lyanna met them in courtyard at dawn, eyes brighter than frost under sunrise. Jon handed the scroll. She read, face still. Then she nodded, a touch of trepidation but more resolve. That evening, in Godswood beneath Hearttree where Ned once prayed, Bran watched from chair as Lyanna knelt. He pricked her thumb with dragonglass shard. Mixed blood with sap at root, whispered old tongue. Leaves rustled though wind hushed. Lyanna's pupils dilated, turning misty silver, then cleared. Bran sighed, relief and exhaustion merging. The gate is open, he said. Another walker on green roads. Jon held daughter's shoulders as she swayed. Daenerys wrapped cloak around both. A new generation now carried weight. The realm found itself again at cusp. Not of war, perhaps, but of greater communion. A council convened in the rebuilt hall, Gyrex perched on lintel, the curve of her tail shedding frost petals that melted before they touched flags. Tyrion laid out maps inked with lines of resonance expanding like ripples into far corners. Ashai, Valyria's smoking ruin, shattered lands of Ulthos. The net wants completion, he said. We cannot afford fear of distances. Daenerys looked across faces. Aegon stern but hopeful. Lyanna sipping broth for steadiness. Arya restless. Gendry scowling at iron shortage. Sam practically glowing with intellectual hunger. She placed palm on table. Then we voyage, she decreed. Not armies. Scholars, singers, builders, healers. She faced Jon, eyes soft. Will you sail with them? Jon felt cold of dawn return, smell of powdered ice. If realm lets me, he answered. But he knew he would go. Dawn's path always pointed beyond map edges. Tyrion raised goblet. To cartographers who draw borders just so rulers may erase them. Laughter, weary and warm, rumbled. Outside, wind shifted. Clouds parted. Aurora flicked faint above horizon though night still hours away. Its green reached down, touched tips of glass pillars visible beyond battlements. Those pillars answered with a pulse, and somewhere far off, on flows where no man yet set boot, a choir of frost voices rose, threading into hum of dragons nestling to roost. The music was unearthly, imperfect, beautiful. Jon closed eyes, letting sound course through scarred throat where death once gripped. He tasted dawn again, sharp like new snow, sweet like mead warmed beside hearth, and understood the hinge of time would never still. Each revolution demanded choice, to fear the creak or lean into turn. He reached for Daenerys's hand, fingers interlacing. We lean, he said, and so the next journey began, not with swords unsheathed nor banners unfurled, but with notebooks, empty hulls, and a dragon of pale crystal unfurling wings toward edge of world, carrying inside her cadence of two songs finally learning to breathe as one.